So with the Ultimate Universe Earth 6160 soon coming to an end, I wanted to put together some full story videos for these runs, because for one, I know some of you guys just love the longer format, but to me it's always great to have a place to revisit the conversation about the complete story. And also, you guys already know, today is a very Wolverine-y day, because depending on when you're seeing this, it's June 2nd, we about to get this Wolverine State of Play and I'm hyped. So with that said, let's get into the full story of Ultimate Wolverine, the Winter Soldier of Earth 6160. So if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like or a hype, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so going into this, we start out on a mission with Ultimate Wolverine, with him being transported in ER airspace near the border of the Eurasian Republic in Latveria. But along the way, there are these two soldiers who are looking at him and just talking about him out loud, saying things like, "You think he can hear us?" And the other one's like, "Why don't you ask?" And dude's like, "I'm not asking him nothing. Creeps me out." And the two of them go back and forth on different rumors they've heard, whether it's things like he was part of some experiment gone wrong in the North American Union, or what they were told from Gorokovsky in infantry, who said that he's pieced together from corpses of soldiers who died in combat, and he can't die. They blow him up, stab him, shoot him, he always comes back, same as before. And they just go on about these stories. And then suddenly, Wolverine stands up. And that alone scares the mess out of the both of them. But the thing is, he's really not paying them much of any mind, because Wolverine just makes his way to the back of the plane, he pulls the hatch and gets ready to jump. And when these guys look at him and they're like, "Oh, he doesn't have a chute," just before he dives out of this plane, I gotta say, it just made me think of that opening scene from Captain America Winter Soldier. But right away, this just shows us that the little we do know about this Wolverine in Earth 6160, and how he came about in the whole Directorate X program. There's only a handful of people who know who and what this guy is, because according to what we saw in Ultimate Universe 1 year in, when we covered his origin, at the time we were told that there's less than a dozen people who actually know the sensitive information concerning the Winter Soldier. And as he heads down, this takes us into a flashback based on what we were shown from his origin, because before he was taken by Directorate X, he was part of a group called the Opposition, who was pretty much a rebel group comprised of humans and mutants who would fight against Eurasian forces and try to free the mutants who were taken. So the Opposition, they would organize all kinds of attacks, and in most cases those who were caught were just killed. But after an airstrike on the Opposition's compound that they thought would kill all of these guys, it killed everyone except Wolverine. So when they found him and discovered how insanely fast he could regenerate from both the explosion and a gunshot from point blank range, that's when they initially decided to use him as their weapon. But after that, when we come back to present day, this dude is still falling. But it's not long before we find out the target that Wolverine is being sent after. It's another Opposition base. And when he crashes down, there's all kind of dust and debris and smoke everywhere. So he just uses it as cover before he starts taking these guys out. And it's crazy because one of these guys just sees the huge silhouettes where Wolverine's just tearing these guys to pieces. And dude is just like, "Dom, what's? Oh my god." But just to be clear, this base isn't the exact same base that Wolverine was stationed at when he was with the Opposition. But instead, this is more of a temporary setup. And we'll get into more about that in a little bit. But what I do want to mention here is that we're told this Wolverine originates from the North American Union, which is now referred to as the former North American Union after the death of Obadiah Stane and the disappearance of Howard Stark. So yeah, just a couple things to know here. This Opposition group, who are being labeled as terrorists in the public eye, they are Wolverine's old friends. There are groups of them in different locations around the world, but the people at this specific location, they're here for a specific reason. And we'll discover what that reason is in just a little bit. But first, when we take a look inside, we see both Nightcrawler and Mystique here inside of this church. And already they can hear the gunshots outside, so they know something ain't right. But as the commotion makes its way closer, and 6 claws pierce their way through the door, followed by a boot kicking it in, it's right here where Nightcrawler tries to tell everyone, brothers and sisters, leave now. But before we see how that goes, next we head into another flashback, which now takes us a bit further ahead from the flashback we saw just moments ago, where now we see a freshly captured Wolverine at Directorate X, where Dr. Alonia Prostovich, I think that's how you say it, but we've seen her before. She's the Director of Science and Technology, and it was at this time when she initially presented Wolverine, who for the most part they referred to as the Specimen, to Colossus, Magic, and Omega Red. And they're looking at him like, this is the same Specimen who survived the airstrike on the Opposition compound outside of Rasputingrad? And she tells him yes, and a bullet to the temple at point blank range. And she goes on to say he regenerated his whole body in record time and had enough strength to kill the soldier who shot him. And Arcady, or Omega Red, he's like, oh, impressive. I like him. So she then goes on to tell them the subject originates from the North American Union, like some of the other opposition forces, though it hasn't spoken since we brought it to Moscow. So it's right here where Colossus is like, okay, so what are we going to do with this? So she brings up the skeletal enhancement that they've attempted before, while assuring him that it will not fail with this specimen. So when Magic points out that this specimen seems a little wild, the doctor tells him that it's only the case for now, and what this specimen has that the other didn't is instinct. He's a survivor. So she goes on to tell them how they tried to minister a sedative 4 different times, and each time they lost a technician. So right there, Colossus is like, if the specimen can't be controlled, then he's useless to them. So right there, the doctor recommends that they use another specimen, a telepath, to get this guy under control. And once that's done, they're going to use him to get rid of the opposition. Which takes us back to the current day, where we find Ultimate Wolverine, aka the Winter Soldier, who's come here to do just that. And just before things pop off, Kurt tries to tell Raven, I know that man, but she just tells everybody to fire. And when this happens, Nightcrawler starts reciting Psalms chapter 23, and it almost feels like a slow motion scene out of a movie, because Wolverine's just destroying these guys this whole time. But Kurt goes on to say, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, he leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness, for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me, in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. And mind you, this whole time, Wolverine's just baptizing these guys while it's going on. But even still, I want you guys to kind of keep this moment in the back of your mind, because it's going to become very significant later. But for right now, eventually this leads to Wolverine more or less chasing Mystique into a corner. So he takes a sniff to figure out where she went, and right here Colossus pops up. And he's just like, opposition rats are swarming all over this place or whatever. So Wolverine looks at him for a second and he takes another sniff just before he leaps out after him claws first. And at a first glance, some might think, oh man, Wolverine, he's coming to his senses. He's fighting back. But this exchange goes by so fast, with Wolverine slicing through the minigun like it's butter. And right after that, Wolverine takes the next set of claws to his neck the same way, only for us to see that it was Mystique this whole time. And the cuts are clean too, it's crazy. But as it stands, we still have yet to see the specifics of Wolverine's history as far as who he was close to in the opposition or who he wasn't close to. And all we really get here is that Mystique knew what he was capable of to some extent, while Nightcrawler actually knew Logan, both on a personal level and to the extent of what he's capable of, which I always love to see anytime we get the reference of these two guys being close. But before this continues, it's here where we jump over to the next flashback. And if you notice, all of these flashbacks, they're really just giving us more detailed information that builds on top of what we saw in Ultimate Universe 1 year in. Because it's here where we see Wolverine once again with the shaved head and the procedure markings all over his body, just moments before he undergoes his skeletal enhancement procedure. And it's here where we're told that his memories have been completely wiped, to the point where he won't even know his name. And all this is done so they can mold his mind to have perfect allegiance with the Eurasian Republic. And Dr. Prestovich goes on to say here, to Colossus and the others, you will not find another specimen like it. Close maybe, but this specimen is truly unique. Its past self is dead. Logan, it once was called, but no more. We have taken to calling it by a nickname. Seemed fitting. Lived, died, born again as we choose. It will be cold-blooded, relentless, merciless. We call it the Winter Soldier. And as we come back to the present day, it's here where Nightcrawler's like, if you are who I think you are, no, I know it's you. I don't know what they've done to you, but this isn't you. And he tries to tell Wolverine like, hey, it's me, Kurt. But Wolverine doesn't say a word. He just tears his way right through to him. So Nightcrawler bamfs out the way, but even still, this forces him to have to protect himself. And he doesn't want to have to fight his friend in the first place. But given the circumstance, he's more or less forced to do so. So he apologizes, he bamfs, kicks him, and then Nightcrawler goes for a gun. And when he does, this man Kurt starts bamfing and blasting, just lighting up Wolverine from all different angles. And this got me thinking like, yo, if they put Nightcrawler in Marvel Rivals and he starts doing this, I wouldn't even be mad. Though I do think it will make more sense for him to have a sword. But either way, I digress. But after some time, it's almost as if Wolverine's picked up on a pattern of Kurt hitting him with the bamf, bamf, braka, braka, braka. So following this, Wolverine does another sniff, sniff, and it's almost like he could smell Kurt entering and exiting the Brimstone dimension. And that's just assuming that this Nightcrawler works like old school Nightcrawler, where he travels through the Brimstone dimension and just comes back in another location. But this time when Wolverine does the sniff, sniff, he catches Kurt fresh out of the next bamf and runs his claws straight through his chest, only to double up shortly after. And it's right here where we find out what the members of the opposition group were doing here. Because it's right here where Kurt calls Wolverine by his name, Logan, and he tells him with tears running down his face, "If you're in there, my friend, I pray you have the strength. I'm sorry we weren't quick enough. We came back for you. We would always come back." And shortly after that, he's gone. And Wolverine just looks at him for a second, retracts his claws, and goes on about his way. But just after this, when he steps outside, and he sees the other bodies of the members who were part of his old group, this causes him to slow down for a second, to where next we hear a voice from his memory saying, "This is your enemy," which now takes us to another flashback, which is the most recent of all the ones we've seen thus far, where now Wolverine's being shown images of both Nightcrawler and Mystique, and he's basically being told these two are your next target. But also this guy goes on to say that these two escaped from the East Berlin camp 2 years ago. They could have been part of the solution, like you, part of history, given themselves, their bodies, their abilities for the Republic. Instead, they are running away. But not you. You are a fighter. You, my friend, you aren't part of history. No, you are history. And it's just kind of like, man, it's one thing when you hear about Wolverine getting his memories wiped or being used as a weapon, because usually that stuff just gets referenced. But to see it actually play out, and I don't mean like an old man Logan where we saw some of that play out, where Mysterio tricked that Wolverine into believing he was fighting Omega Red, Sabretooth, Lady Deathstrike, Shocker, Scorpion, Avalanche, Silver Samurai, you name it, only for that Wolverine to find out that he had pretty much just went ham and slaughtered the X-Men. I mean, we did see a portion of that, and that was wild. But what I'm saying is if Ultimate Wolverine goes on to tell us the story of him hunting down his old friends, who we're getting to learn more about along the way, which to me gives it more emotional attachment, or it increases the emotional investment for what's to come. But I couldn't imagine the wrath that this guy would bring down when the day comes and he gets his memories back, because you already know, heads are gonna roll. And that goes for everybody involved with Directorate X, which like we saw in Ultimate Universe 1 year in, the Maker supposedly doesn't know about any of this. The Maker just told Colossus and the others to control mutants. They never reported back the details. But either way, I feel like I'm starting to rant. But it's here where we see Wolverine back on the plane, where he sniffs the blood on his helmet and he remembers the words of Psalms 23, the same scripture that Kurt was saying when Wolverine was tearing everybody to pieces. And it's like, you know, with him remembering this scripture so well, in addition to these multiple flashbacks that he's having, it kind of makes you wonder what other memories are coming back to this guy right about now. Alright, so going into this, we start out 30 years ago with Truett Hudson, who as we know in the main Marvel Universe became an advisor to the US Army, operating under the name of Professor Thornton, where during the closing days of World War II in the main Marvel Universe, Thornton, or just the Professor, as the soldiers like to call him, discovered a Nazi lab that belonged to Nathaniel Essex, which led to him finding Nathaniel's journal, which would change his work forever, because this led to the Professor learning about a number of individuals with very unique abilities, and these would be individuals like Charles Xavier, Eric Lensher, Namor McKenzie, and James Howlett, who he would later go on to call mutants. But long story short, we saw his attention gravitate towards James Howlett heavily. And I mean, he was basically stalking the guy, with him believing Howlett was the perfect candidate, because after years of toiling on the early Weapons Plus programs, Professor Thornton had been put in charge of the 10th, which would then be called the Weapon X program. But in this universe, on Earth 6160, we find Professor Thornton 30 years ago, which places this moment like in the mid-1990s, but even with things playing out differently here and coming together much later, you can tell that things are heading in the direction of Weapon X, because right now where we find Professor Thornton, he's tape recording notes on his weapons project, which has been postponed multiple times pending further analysis, and you can tell he's in a spot where the government's holding funds and pushing his project back because he hasn't been able to show them any substantial breakthroughs. But as he's recording, he says here, still our initial findings have yielded results that may be useful. Through our first adamantium infused subject, Weapon Alpha died within minutes of the procedure, And because this is taking place in the North American region, I don't think it would be too far off to assume that Weapon Alpha was his half-brother, James Hudson. And I mean, if that was the case, it'd be really messed up, regardless of how you look at it. But he goes on to say here, my small but devoted staff and I have discovered a remarkable number of individuals with abilities beyond our own living among us in secret. Mutants, so-called. The rumored Homo superior, and as he goes on to say, are potential subjects. The pictures were shown are that of Logan, and for the other three, I believe are Maverick, Sabretooth, and Wraith. Because I mean, they're not exactly labeled or anything like that, but I mean, the first one's definitely Wolverine. But this basically shows us that these potential subjects are basically the members of Team X from Earth 616. So in this world, Professor Thornton, who's considering these individuals at this time, he's basically on the brink of making this happen. Because in this recording, he goes on to say, some of these individuals have the ability to heal themselves, others a supernaturally heightened agility. We do not know their full potential, with the pending approval from the Department of, and that's when the Maker steps in. And again, this is 30 years ago, so it's about 1995 or something. So around this time, the Maker's still making his rounds and changing history the way he sees fit. So Professor Thornton, he's like Deborah Cox. He's like, how did you get here? Nobody's supposed to be here. Even though that song wouldn't come out for another 3 years. And the Maker tells him here, I am a simple man in search of a better world. So the Professor responds saying, there is no such thing as a perfect world, only for the Maker to tell him, a better world, Professor. Better. And that's when the Professor's just like, I never seen you before, what's your clearance? As he makes his way to his desk to reach for a firearm, only for the Maker to hit him with the T-1000 foster parent treatment, because he just kills the Professor right here on the spot. And just after this, the Maker goes on to say, you see, Professor, I am making this a better world, and a better world is one that you're not in. Just before he burns this entire building down to the ground. And it's just like, man, the Maker didn't try to persuade this guy or force him to work for him, none of that. But aside from this, we know that the Maker has been in control of the US government since at least 1963. So any resources that Professor Thornton might have had, the Maker also has access to. But aside from this, I also want to point out what we saw in Ultimate Universe 1 year in, when we got the audio dictation logs of Dr. Alonia Prostovic, back when she talked about how the Maker was handling mutants. When at the time she said the task was handed down to us from the Maker himself. The Eurasian Republic was to be centralized home to mutant kind, though its primary motive was to control, and who better to control the mutant problem than mutants themselves. What the Maker did not know, however, was what the Eurasian Republic chose to do with those mutants. It was not to provide them with sanctuary, nor was it to imprison them. Despite their genetic similarities, they were not viewed as brother and sister, but as tools. Their unique abilities made them, shall we say, useful, which at the time went on to show us how Logan was discovered by the Eurasian Republic and how Directorate X was formed by the leaders of this territory, Colossus, Magic, and Omega Red, who didn't trust the peace that the Maker established between the different territories, which is why they took it upon themselves to make Directorate X and have everyone here operate as bureaucratic phantoms, which is why they have Ultimate Wolverine as their Winter Soldier, with a lot of the focus currently being on taking out the opposition, which is like your covert group of both mutants and humans who want to free all of the mutants who've been controlled and experimented on by the Eurasian Republic. And this is just one of 2 places in the world for all known mutant activity, because like we've seen in our coverage of Ultimate X-Men, which takes place in Japan, now that story is pointing things back to the Maker's Council, it's all starting to come together. And it's not exactly lining up with how the Maker had planned for mutants to be managed in either territory. And we talk more about that in the Ultimate X-Men videos. But in the here and now, as this takes us over into the present day, for a brief moment we pick up with a group of soldiers who are out here tracking someone in the snow, and as they continue to make their way through this wooded area, one of these dudes sees something in the trees, and before you know it, this dude gets picked off by the Winter Soldier. And we'll find out more about what exactly is happening here in just a moment. But before we do, first we head over to a meeting between Dr. Alonia and the leaders of the Eurasian Republic. And at this point, the doctor is basically explaining herself because the leaders have their suspicions on whether or not the Winter Soldier is fully under their control. And it's like with them using telepathy as a method of controlling the Winter Soldier, Magic mentions here how they're not the only ones with telepaths. And she even puts out there the idea of having them terminated. And this causes a bit of confusion for the doctor as far as why they're having this discussion. Because at this point, the Winter Soldier's been on 4 missions and all 4 have been successful. So the doctor's like, hey, I don't even know why I'm defending myself. And that's when Magic hits her with the, oh, you thought I didn't know. And that's when she takes all of them over to the lab where Logan's being held, because there's a growing concern with Logan having nightmares that he's possibly remembering his past or perhaps growing unconscious for some of the things that he's done. And back at the end of issue 1, we caught a glimpse of this possibly starting already, because just after he killed Kurt and Raven, he took a sniff of the blood that was on him just before he went on to remember Psalms 23 in its entirety, which was the scripture that Kurt was reciting just before he confronted Logan and Logan killed him. And right now, when Magic brings all of them here to the lab where Logan's at, they get here right in the middle of Logan having another nightmare. So the doctor, who's a bit disoriented from their means of travel, she quickly tries to gather herself and explain how this is normal behavior and how while he's resting and regenerating, it's normal for him to have dreams. And that's where Colossus just tells her to let him out so he can examine the specimen himself. So the doctor tells him that she doesn't think that's such a good idea. And throughout this, you'll see her refer to any of the three of these guys as leader. But right here, Colossus just snatches her up and he tells her, do not underestimate how disposable you are, doctor. Remove the specimen now. So that's precisely what she does, quick, fast, and in a hurry. And when Logan steps out of the containment, she tells Colossus that his vitals are reading normal, and she advises that he uses verbal commands or otherwise he may react poorly. And that's when he tells Dr. Prestovich, do not dictate how I may interact with my own property. I know how to handle creatures like this. It's not with verbal commands. Creatures like this, men like this, they know violence, they respect it. Because unlike you, men like this know there's no such thing as safe. Every second of existence, there is someone or something trying to take from you. And men like this, they know that men like me stand in their way. If you don't crush them, if you don't show them your power, your true power, they will resist. It is inevitable, Doctor. After all, he has done so before. So we will reinforce the lesson. The Winter Soldier's rightful place is under our heel. And after saying that, Colossus just tosses him off to the side. And he goes on to say, I think we should see this Winter Soldier in action. No more reports, we want to see. And right there, he's just like Ileana, Arcady, and the two of them, both Magic and Omega Red, they agree. And with how this is done, it's pretty interesting because Colossus tells the Doctor that they're basically going to do this field test where they'll send 10 soldiers after the Winter Soldier. And depending on how he does, not only will that determine what they do with him, but the Doctor as well. So just before they leave, Colossus asks the Doctor if she understands. So she tells him yes, and right after that, she says, come Winter Soldier, you have a new mission ahead of you. And this whole time, even though Logan's been very compliant, it almost seems like he understands that he knows that he needs to do well in this field test or whatever for the sake of Dr. Prestovich's safety. And this is what takes us back to the attack that we saw earlier. And the messed up thing is these guys don't even know what took out they mans. And at first they think it's the opposition. But one of these guys got a look and he's like, nah, it ain't look like the opposition. But that alone just lets us know that the Eurasian leaders just sent these guys out here to test the Winter Soldier without any of them having the slightest clue of what they're getting into. And on one hand, that might have taken some time to actually do, since only a few higher ups know about the Winter Soldier, and outside of that, a handful of soldiers who may have gone on missions with him. But for the most part, to the rest of these guys, the Winter Soldier is a myth. And that's why when we see 9 of these guys left, they're out here just sharing theories of what it might be. And one of these guys is like, my babushka told me stories when I was little of a creature in the woods, Leshy, the forest spirit. To where another guy's like, nah, I saw it running on all fours like an animal. And another one jumps in like, nah, like a demon. Until finally, one of these dudes is like, it's no monster, it's no demon or forest spirit. It's the Winter Soldier. And this other dude is like, oh, that's a myth. And it's like, bro, after all these guesses, after people saying it's a monster, it's a forest spirit, it's a demon, you got the audacity to hear Winter Soldier and be like, oh no, that's a myth. But eventually among these guys, we find out that there's others here that have a bit more sense. And they end up piecing this together. Because for them, there have been rumors and whispers of the Winter Soldier. So he basically is a myth. But according to these rumors, he's supposed to be on their side. So with them more or less going over this logic, only for them to then see that there's cameras observing this whole thing. And that's when it starts to click. And they're like, okay, it's practice. And I mean, right there is like, not quite, but you're getting warmer. But they do come around to figuring out that it's a hunt that's being observed or monitored. But they never quite figure out if they're hunting him or if he's hunting them. And it's right here where Ultimate Wolverine, the Winter Soldier, steps out. And there's really this vibe of like, it doesn't matter who's hunting who, because this ends the same way. Either way. And it's right here when the Winter Soldier pops his claws where a whole lot of ammunition gets wasted. And you know, it's like when I see this, I be thinking like, man, it's kind of messed up for these guys. And it makes me wonder if when they signed up for this job, did anyone tell them that their deaths may be recorded for quality assurance? Because I don't know, man, it just seems like a really terrible way to go. Like at work, on the clock. Like, it's crazy. But following this, the Winter Soldier takes all of their heads and he walks up to one of the cameras. And it's right here where he looks straight into it and he poses for the thumbnail just before taking the camera out. And just after this, we see that the leaders of the Eurasian Republic are satisfied with the Winter Soldier's performance and compliance. But I can't help but to think that the Doctor is celebrating this for different reasons. Alright, so going into issue 3, this picks up 17 miles outside of Smolensk, Russia, where a couple of members from the opposition are making their way out here to do a very secret and very careful recruitment after losing one of their drivers recently. And so far throughout this series, it's been really cool to see these members of the opposition, who for the most part are characters we've known as X-Men. And that's still the case when we find out the two members who've made their way out here are Remy LeBeau and Catherine Pryde. And when they meet up with this new recruit, for a second there's like this stare down, because Gambit and Kate want to be sure that she's someone they can trust, because they've been working with the opposition for at least a year. Which we'll learn more about in a little bit, because we'll get a glimpse into everyone's history as this continues, because the Eurasian Republic is looking for all three of them. So Gambit asks her here, you know the time, yeah? Almost like it's a code question for her to respond so he knows she's legit. So the new recruit kind of stutters and she's like, it's the day of battle, which doesn't do it for Gambit. So he's like, ain't it always? But Kate Pryde, she just skips all the code talk. She's like, who sent you here? And that's where the new recruit tells her, the Archangel, I escaped the Republic control and was recruited outside Warsaw. I want to fight. And again, because Gambit is not trusting this stranger even in the slightest, he just tells her like, look, you don't get a choice. We're here because we need a driver. The last one got killed in a raid and we don't need more combat boots. But Kate Pryde just cuts him off right there. She's like, stop it. We need all the help we can get. But at the same time, we really do need a driver. Can you drive? And that's where the new recruit reveals her face and we see that it's Black Widow. Just before she tells them, I can do many things. To where from here they make their way back into the city, into the opposition's base. And following this, we learn more details about the three of them, as well as others, as we head over to a briefing that's being held for a ton of Republic officers. Because as they go over the intel, they start out with the raid from last week, where an opposition vehicle was successfully stopped, which just happens to be the same vehicle that Gambit and Kate Pryde were traveling in. And the driver who was killed that they're replacing with their recent recruit, as it turns out, it was the mutant Gregor Smerdyakov, who on Earth 616 is also known as Tree Man, or Brother Gregor. And they don't talk too much about him here, so I'm not sure if the Tree Man on Earth 6160 is anything like the one from Earth 616, but if he was, I can only imagine that he would be very important to mutant kind on this world, because in his tree form he could bear fruits that would either activate a dormant mutant gene or enhance existing mutant powers. So either ability would be a huge advantage for the opposition. But he's also one of those characters in the main Marvel universe who was thought to have been dead at one point, only to sprout back up later on in Krakoa, you know, back when that was a thing. So I wouldn't completely count him out, because someone like him would actually be perfect for what's going on in Ultimate X-Men. But at the same time, who knows, like I wouldn't hold my breath. But going forward in this briefing, for a moment they focus on Gambit, while saying that he's responsible for the Mikhail massacre, which took the life of their leader, Mikhail Rasputin, the brother of Pyotr and Ilyana Rasputin. And as of recently in the past month, they have reason to believe that one of their own, Natalia Romanova, just joined them, and she's now working with the opposition. And in addition to that, they now have information citing a nearby location where the two North American expatriates have joined forces with the opposition, so they're sending their best out there to eliminate them all. And this is where we find Ultimate Wolverine, the Winter Soldier, who's made his way out to this opposition base to basically eliminate everybody. Because that's practically what all of his missions have been based around so far. Eliminating members of the opposition so the Eurasian Republic and its leaders can maintain control, which heavily deals with controlling mutants more specifically. But right now, Wolverine heading through the abandoned sewer tunnels underneath the opposition's base. The men who are accompanying him this time, they've learned from the mistakes of the others, who, like we've seen in the previous issues, they've all been considered to be disposable. But as you would imagine, people talk. So this time around, one of these guys, he asks the other one, did you get these too? As he shows him a magazine full of adamantium bullets. And the other guy tells him, oh yeah, we all got them, just in case. Which right there just lets you know that either these guys have seen leaked footage or people have been talking. One way or the other, word's gotten out that the Winter Soldier will kill friendlies. So going forward, these guys are prepared for it. Or at least they think they are. But as they head closer to the opposition base, the Winter Soldier sees these glowing pink lights, and one of the guys with him take a closer look, and he's like, they're all chess pieces lining the tunnel. They're all queens and they're glowing. So Wolverine, the Winter Soldier, he picks one of these guys up, and he cranks a fastball special, tossing this dude deeper into the abandoned sewer tunnel, right in the middle of all these glowing queens. And when he does, at first these guys are a bit confused about what's going on here, but then that queen starts glowing brighter, and they hear a sizzling sound that can only mean one thing, just before the chess piece detonates, blowing this guy way down to the bone. while creating a path for the Winter Soldier to make his way in, because apparently these chess pieces were just charged explosive mines set in place by Gambit. And really, the sound of that explosion by itself, that was enough to let the opposition know that their base has been compromised, which was kind of the point of Gambit placing mines in the abandoned sewer tunnels, because as soon as they hear this explosion, Gambit's like, the mines, bad man's here. Bad man show. Now I want a Jamaican Gambit. But Gambit says here, the mines will slow him down, but we gotta get moving, like yesterday. So Kate tells Natasha to get the truck started. It's already loaded and they need to leave now. So Natasha gets ready to drive the truck and Kate gets on the truck with her. And when she does, her and Gambit kind of have this moment where there's a bit of flirting and a kiss before she leaves. And it's kind of like, man, don't let Logan see this. And I'm not sure if 616 Logan or Colossus would approve. And I mean, this is a whole nother universe, so who knows what some of those dynamics would even mean here. But Kate and Natasha aren't able to go anywhere for a moment because the truck won't start. And it has Natasha like, oh, come on, I just escaped. Tell me you don't want to get me caught. So to buy some time and hold off whoever's making their way in, Gambit calls for the opposition soldiers to get their guns and cover the door, just before he goes to take a look at the camera feed to see what they're up against. And that's where he sees what looks to be just one man with some knives. And that's where Gambit's like, oh man, this don't feel good. Only for him to turn around and see that the truck hasn't even moved yet. And now things are getting intense as the Winter Soldier cuts through the door and the truck still hasn't started. And they're literally cutting it close, no pun intended, because as soon as the Winter Soldier cuts his way in, the truck starts. And man, as soon as Winter Soldier Wolverine cuts through this door, he just kicks it down and comes charging in. But when he does, these opposition soldiers, they just start unloading on this guy. But the bullets are just pinging all over the place. And when Gambit gets a look at him, he draws a card and he's like, my, what big claws you have. Just before Wolverine tears through these opposition soldiers. And keep in mind, when it comes to the opposition, even though they're mainly about rescuing mutants from the Eurasian Republic, there's a number of people who are part of the opposition who are only human. So for the most part on these missions, we'll see like a ton of soldiers who are normal people, among some other mutants who will only have like a mutated appearance. So it's not like these opposition bases are just packed with super overpowered Omega level mutants. And as far as the mutants who are able to put up a fight, we'll only see a couple of them at any of these locations. But with Wolverine bodying these soldiers before the truck can even pull out, Gambit only has time to grab onto the side of the truck and throw a couple cards out to keep the Winter Soldier back. But this guy just keeps coming. And I mean like through the explosion and all that. So Gambit makes his way inside and Natasha's like, that was close. And Gambit tells her, too close. Too close. And he mentions that he knew a guy with claws like that once, but they were bone instead. So that lets us know that he knew Logan once upon a time. But while they're over here thinking they're safe, the Winter Soldier is on all fours catching up with the truck. You know, kind of like Professor X in that one movie. I mean, James McAvoy. Man, I tell you, I never looked at him the same after Glass. But either way, when the Winter Soldier hops onto the back of this truck, he cuts the lock and he lifts the door. And this is where we see that Kate, Remy, and Natasha, they're out here saving children from the Rasputins. And it's like with seeing this, it has me thinking now, like it makes a lot more sense in cases like either Natasha or Remy, who both had really rough childhoods in the main Marvel universe. It makes sense that they would want to protect and save children here as well, regardless of them being mutants. And that's just assuming they have some of those similarities here on Earth 6160. But when Wolverine opens the door here, Kate tells him the Rasputins have no right to these children. But as soon as she sees his claws, she's like, oh my god, Logan. And she tries to tell him, Logan, stop, I don't want to do this. Logan, if that's you, I don't know what happened to you. If it is, why don't you remember me? And it's right here when she reaches through Logan's head. A number of memories flash before his eyes. And among these images, we see one with Colossus, one with Wolverine running with the wolves, another with the woman he loved, who might be Silver Fox, though I really have no clue, could be anything in this universe, another with him destroying a Sentinel, which is a moment in time that we've barely scratched the surface of, and I think the most we've learned about that is what Captain America saw in the Ultimates, when he was getting caught up on the Maker's history, and aside from that, Wolverine gets a glimpse of his childhood, and even the whole process of him becoming the Winter Soldier. And after doing this, Kate makes the wise decision of just kicking him off the truck, because you can't be too careful. But now it's like with every mission that we've seen the Winter Soldier go on, every mission that we've seen Ultimate Wolverine go on, it's like on each one of them he gets back a piece of himself. So now it's like just repeating back in his head, Logan, why don't you remember? Because after this encounter with Kate, Logan has just been shown the most memories that he's seen since he became the Winter Soldier. But the question still remains, will this be enough to bring him back? Alright, so in Ultimate Wolverine issue 4, right away this throws us into Logan's mind, where we basically see him as this lone wolf fighting his way through the systems that Dr. Prostovic had placed in his mind to keep him under control. And it's a 3-part system that we'll learn more about in a little bit. But as Wolverine's fighting these mental barriers, so to speak, he can also hear the different scientists around him freaking out because his physical body on the outside is also reacting to this as well. But what's crazy here is how Logan reacts to what they're saying, because as this continues, the things that we see Logan saying, they start to overlap the words of the scientists, meaning that he's getting closer to regaining his conscious mind. Though unfortunately, he's only able to get so far with that. But at first, while these scientists are freaking out and trying to get him sedated, some of the first words that Logan remembers are the words from Kitty Pryde back in issue 3, when she reached into Logan's mind and asked him, "Why don't you remember?" And what we learn now is much like what we saw where that was depicted as glass shattering with all these different memories from Logan's past. This was actually her shattering the barriers that are being used to control Logan. And I don't even think Kitty was fully aware of what specifically was used on him, but with her reaching into his mind, this was like her taking a hammer to whatever wasn't supposed to be in there, knowing that Logan could take it and he would recover, and just hoping that the real Logan would come through after these barriers are broken. But with her doing this, she's basically created a path for Logan's true self to come back to the surface, because now after getting Kitty's help, these scientists really only have 1 out of 3 methods, with Kitty fracturing the second 2. So just to run through what those 3 are really quick, the first one is the sedatives, which is basically what we're seeing this wolf, Logan, fight against visually. And these scientists say they've even given him enough to take down King Kong, but Logan's not going down. And the second out of these 3, which sounds like 2, but these both are number 2 since Dr. Prostovic said so. But the second is re-education and manipulation, which is basically what you would expect from a Winter Soldier program as far as the process of retraining Logan's mind. And then finally for number 3, there's telepathy. But again, these scientists, they really only have the sedatives, because when it comes to option 2 or 3, which are your re-education and manipulation, or telepathy, there are few people who have access to using them. So in the here and now, with the sedatives not working, you have one of these guys who just keeps saying, "Where is she at? Where's Dr. Prostovic?" since she's the only one who has access to the other 2 methods, which basically works like a system of pillars where if one fails, then the others have to compensate. But while Logan is making his way through this fractured system in his mind, there's a part of this that also pertains to his physical body, with his heart rate dropping and his blood pressure bottoming out. So one of these guys is like, he's going into cardiac arrest, we gotta get him out of the chamber. Meanwhile, another scientist is like, no we don't, we need to make sure the guards get here first. And that's where the one who said let him out, Scientist Blue, I'll just call him that for the sake of the discussion. But looking at Logan's vitals, this dude's like, if he dies, do you really want to explain that to the Rasputins? And at one point, Scientist Blue asks Green, how much sedative did he pump into the chamber? So Green tells him 800 milligrams of phenobarbital, because that's what they've been giving him. So when they go to open the chamber, the orange scientist, who this whole time has been like, nah, nope, I don't want no parts of that, he's telling Blue they need to wait for the guards. So Blue just tells him to activate the Sentinel, though unfortunately none of these guys can, because only Dr. Prostovic has the access key, which is a really messed up system if we're completely honest here, because these scientists don't have access to nothing but some drugs. But at the same time when they open the chamber, in Logan's mind we see him go up against this huge white bear, and as he does, on the outside, Logan's vitals go back up to normal. And there's a bit of a parallel between what's happening on both ends, because in Logan's mind when he attacks the bear, it basically just smacks him down and it walks away. While on the outside, Logan's staring these scientists down, he's standing up, and you have Retskova, or Scientist Blue, who keeps saying, oh it's fine, the chamber will hold, while at the same time he doesn't sound too sure about it. So he tells Green to give him more of the sedative, while internally, Logan's getting ready to go after the bear again, as he remembers the different things that he's been called, like Relentless, Survivor, Hunter, and Specimen, which all eventually overlap with the 3 names that Dr. Prostovic mentioned in Ultimate Universe 1 year in, where as far as she knows, his name has went from Logan to Specimen to Winter Soldier. And as this continues, these single words that Logan's able to say here, in his mind, they eventually evolved from Logan and Specimen, which were the names that he's been called, to other words that describe who and what he is, as well as some other things that he's been called. But in Logan's mind, as he goes for round 2, he also goes off on the outside, and this is where he gets closer to regaining full control of his mind, because now as he's attacking both on the inside and out, which are both still very disconnected, because Logan's only able to form single words at this point, and just in his mind at that. But as he does, and he's killing people on the outside, in Logan's mind, his words are now starting to overlap all the other scientists. Even though in his mind, the wolf gets knocked to the side again, but even still, he keeps on trying. And now when Logan gets to this stage, his mind is almost free. More words are coming together, images are forming in the snowy mist, and all he has to do is get past this bear. But also at this time on the outside, this is where Dr. Prostovic finally arrives. And I mean, at this point, one of the scientists have already lost his hand, but either way, the doctor's there now. So she starts saying things like, Winter Soldier, stop, I command you to stop, while also telling the remaining guards she can control them. And right now, even with Logan making all of this progress in his mind, when the doctor says Winter Soldier, again, that's who Logan sees in his mind, as he continues to fight while saying animal, merciless, relentless, weapon, Logan, Logan, Logan. But when Dr. Prestovic says Winter Soldier, Sputnik, he just freezes, and when we step outside of his mind, we see the laboratories looking like a Jackson Pollock painting as a result of Logan nearly getting his mind back. And the only way that Dr. Prestovic was able to stop him is because some of that re-education and manipulation is still intact. And again, with this bloodbath, it wasn't like Logan was actually in control, because while we were watching what was happening on the inside, with Logan relentlessly fighting to regain control, on the outside he just seemed like a mindless animal, where every and anyone in his way was a target. But right here, after the doctor gets Logan to stop, she tells one of the guards to chain his hands, and this dude just looks at her like, you want me to do what? And it looks like he's about to ask her, are you sure that's safe? Because I'm sure this dude wants confirmation, affirmation, two-step authentication that he won't end up like everybody else they found in this room. But nonetheless, she tells him, do what I say, and he does it. Which from here, this has the doctor taking Logan to the third point of control. And she talks more about this system on the way, when another scientist steps in, and he's like, what happened here? I was under the impression that the Winter Soldier was controlled. And that's when she tells him something happened on the last mission, something in its brain. Maybe a chip got fried, either way. We need to reestablish control. And at first, this guy thinks she's talking about more of the sedatives. And this is where Dr. Prestovic tells him, I am talking about her. It's never been about one point of control, but three. Sedatives, re-education and manipulation, and telepathy. One levee breaks, another holds. As she goes on to say, whatever tether is still there, we must have her reinforce it. So right here, once again, Dr. Prestovic's one of the very few who has access to where they're heading, which is destination Cerebellum. And I imagine aside from her having access, it would just be others like their leaders, the Rasputins and Arcady, because even now this other scientist is like, you gotta be sanctioned to go down there. So Dr. Prestovic just tells him that she'll ask for forgiveness later, because they really can't take the chance of all of the systems that are controlling the Winter Soldier just completely breaking down. And as they go further in, the other scientist, he's like, a tight enclosed space deep beneath the earth. With this monster? What could possibly go wrong? But what's crazy to see here is that this is basically their version of Cerebro. And as they go further, the scientist is like, I've never been this deep inside the Kremlin. And Dr. Prestovic tells him, be glad you haven't. Good things do not happen here, Sergey. Not at the center of the earth, which almost makes it seem like she's portraying this place to be like a type of hell, which is a crazy combination to think about. And when they go inside, she turns on the lights and she tells Logan, here's the solution to your problem, Winter Soldier. Whatever you did out there nearly severed our link, but we can fix that. She can fix that. The Phoenix Specimen. She will fix your broken mind. As they walk in here and find Jean Grey, the ultimate Phoenix, with the brain of Charles Xavier just above her. And we learn a lot more following this, because next we're shown a classified transcription of Dr. Prestovic's private dictation logs, where she goes on to say a few notes on Cerebellum, Xavier, and Phoenix Grey. The Charles Xavier body remained in the freezer beneath the Kremlin for some years after his death, under the purview of Directorate X. Nobody quite knew what to do with it. I read the files concerning the Xavier specimen and found them to be captivating. Between Eric Eisenhart, the so-called Magneto specimen, and he, they could have controlled the world. Their powers seemed to be boundless, beyond imagination. Thus, they were deemed Omega-level mutants. None of this class currently exists, and the one known specimen who does resides in Republic control. There is strangely very little written about Xavier, Eisenhart, or Omega-level mutants. But what little there is, I've used to further my studies on Homo Superior and their further application for weaponization in service of the Eurasian Republic. I received proper clearance, of course, and proceeded to remove the brain from the Xavier specimen's body. It seems that in life, Xavier's body was tragically weak, while his brain was, in turn, massively powerful. If it was preserved well enough, I figured I could use that powerful brain for Republic purposes. We also had in our custody the Jean Grey specimen, who we have nicknamed Phoenix Specimen, in reference to her latent abilities and possible extraterrestrial possession. I covered this extensively in the Phoenix designated file. See also the Poltava incident. However, the Phoenix Specimen is so supremely powerful, it is a necessity to keep her fully sedated and controlled at all times, confined to the cerebellum. She is fed and hydrated intravenously with the minimal essentials to survive. Due to her inactivity, her muscles have atrophied to such an extent that it renders her body useless. Even if she, this all-powerful figure, did break free from the cerebellum, how could she escape when her legs would surely not carry her? The Phoenix Specimen necessitated a certain amount of suggestion, as she must remain in a sedated state. it occurred to me that we may be able to utilize the Xavier specimen to control her further. Hosting the Xavier specimen, rather, its disembodied brain, high above the Phoenix specimen in the cerebellum, we allowed it to soothe, direct, and amplify the Phoenix specimen's abilities through targeted electrical impulses. It is the perfect system, really. We control her, and she, in turn, controls the designated specimens. Further amplification is provided by the spherical shell of the cerebellum itself. See Cerebellum Designated File. We have, thus far, utilized the Phoenix specimen to control Ursus, Krolenko, and Petrovna specimens, to varying success. Where we have had our greatest success has been with the Winter Soldier specimen. She seems to calm him in a way the others do not experience. I shall look further into this anomaly. So yeah, we kind of know what she's going to find there, as far as why Jean is able to calm Logan and not so much the others. And I gotta say, man, it's kind of crazy between what we're seeing in this, as well as Peach Momoko's Ultimate X-Men run, where in that case, mutants are basically being manufactured, in addition to the whole mutant cult thing. And it's just like, man, on Earth 6160, things are dark for the mutant population, or what's left of it, I should say. Alright, so coming back, this continues in Rasputingrad, in the Eurasian Republic, which is ran by the Maker's Council members Colossus, Magic, and Omega Red. And as soon as we go into this, we pick right up with Ultimate Sabretooth, who runs a bar here. But at this time, the bar is closing, so he's telling everyone goodnight as they leave. And he's just like, thank you, come back again tomorrow. Which already is a huge departure from what most might have expected. But as soon as these people leave and he turns off the sign and locks up, we quickly find out that he's actually working with the opposition by way of using this bar as a cover-up to smuggle mutants out of the Eurasian Republic. So after everyone leaves, he tells these two kids, Artie and Leech, that they can come out. And it's right here where we get a moment that has a lot of cohesive elements, with it referencing some of the stuff we already know, while teasing what's around the corner. Because when Sabretooth tells them that their driver will be here soon, we know from what we saw in issue 3 that the opposition is short on drivers. And not too long ago, they recruited a new driver, who for us turned out to be a very familiar face. But while they're waiting here, Sabretooth tells them that he took the liberty of making them some food, since it's gonna be a long ride with no stops, not till they clear the border. So he tells them here, this should last, hearty soup, good for the soul they say. But they also say a lot of things. So the kids dig in, and after that he makes them a Shirley Temple, though he only has enough to make one. But it really doesn't matter because the kids are happy to have it either way. But at the same time, this is where the story more or less teases who these kids are, for anyone who might not have known just at a glance, with Leech having the ability to negate mutant powers, and Artie being able to project a person's thoughts or memories. Because for a moment here, Artie uses his powers on Sabretooth in hopes of getting him to tell them another story, which I imagine for the kids is a lot of fun, because any story you tell, Artie's just gonna make it a movie. So Sabretooth lets them know that he'll tell them a story, but first he's gotta take out the trash, which at first just goes down as normal as you might imagine. But while he's outside, he sees a plane fly overhead that he recognizes to be one of the military planes that come through doing routine scans. So he quickly races back inside to tell Leech and Artie to get back under the floor. And he tells them here it won't be long, I promise. The driver will be here in no time, but he just needs them to get out of sight to be on the safe side. But as soon as the kids go back under the floor, he hears someone trying to come through the door. And whoever this person is, they're just rattling that door handle like crazy. So Sabretooth just tells Leech and Artie to stay quiet while he goes to the door to check out and see who it is. And it's one of those things where it's like, even though he's expecting the driver, all of this still comes off as odd. Because when he opens the door, at first he's given the sign of it just being a false alarm. Because as soon as he looks outside, nobody's there. With the exception of like this homeless person who's staggering across the street, who's just like, door's locked, bar's closed. So on the surface, it would seem like that guy was just trying to come to the bar. So he came to the door, tried the handle, it was locked, so he walked off. But when Sabretooth shuts the door and he locks it back, he turns around and he takes a sniff. And right away he realizes that someone else is in the bar. So he follows his nose, which leads him back to the kitchen area. And as soon as he takes a look, he's just like, you. So the rumors are true. Back from the dead, huh, Logan? Smells off. Something about you's changed. Smells almost rotten. Maybe you really are dead. Then Sabretooth's like, nah, not dead. But you ain't yourself. Are you? And right there, as soon as Wolverine pops his claws, Sabretooth's like, well. I'd say you're not yourself at all. And again, this just plays out so well because of what we know going into this. Because with us now learning about Sabretooth working with the opposition, we know that him and Logan have quite the history together. Especially with Sabretooth mentioning that he's got quite a few stories about him and Logan that he could tell Artie and Leech. So now with him seeing Logan as the Winter Soldier, making his way here and attacking him, this just has Sabretooth like, I know you. I know Logan, and I know Logan would be too smart to try that on me. You're him, but you're not him. An empty vessel. Butchers, they messed with your brain, didn't they? They took their little fingers, their tools, and they poked and pulled. just like they did with, and just before he can finish that sentence, Wolverine cuts his arm off. Because, you know, we can't have Sabretooth out here telling us too much about the Ultimate Universe, so it works as a way to keep some of the details mysterious. But even with Sabretooth's arm cut off, it starts to grow back rather quickly. And he goes on to more or less tell Wolverine here, I don't know why they got you in a mask, but I'm gonna rip it off your face and find out. Cause again, Sabretooth knows this is Logan, and they have history. And just based on what we know about Logan's history from Ultimate Universe 1 year in, when Logan was initially taken in by Dr. Prestovic, this was following an attack where the opposition was trying to free mutants, where Logan was severely injured, which is how they were able to get their hands on him. And I can only imagine at the time this was one of many missions that Logan had been on trying to free other mutants, where Sabretooth may have been right there with them. And if not that mission specifically, then undoubtedly many others. And this we know by way of a flashback that we get here, where we see both Wolverine and Sabretooth in their opposition uniforms, sharing a drink and having a conversation by the campfire. And the badge or logo that they're wearing, we mainly know because it showed up a few times, either on flyers or whatever, to let people know that they're about mutant liberation. And the logo's like two fists crossing each other, kind of like an X, but this welcomed both humans and mutants alike, coming together to help other mutants to free them from Eurasian captivity and get them to safety. But in this flashback, we're not really told what specific mission that they're on, and that's not really so much what's important about it, because it's more so what they're talking about here. Because it was at this time when Wolverine told Sabretooth, like, hey, I want you to promise me one thing, if they ever capture me. And it was right there where Sabretooth stopped him, like, they ain't gonna capture you. But Logan was like, no, I'm serious, Creed. And he tells him, I don't want to become one of them puppets, so I want you to promise me, you'll kill me. And at the time, Creed told him, that's a tall order coming from a fella with a healing factor that keeps death at arm's length. And as they're sharing this drink, we jump back and forth between the flashback and the present day, because Sabretooth remembers Logan telling him at the time how he knows it's going to be difficult because they both have a crazy healing factor. But even still, he told Creed, I want you to promise me that. Find a way to make it happen. Make it permanent. We've seen what they've done, Creed. We know what they make us do to the folks we fought side by side with, died with. I ain't gonna walk away from this fire until I know I got your word. I've been fighting with you long enough to know you're good for it. You're bonded to your word and I want to know you'll do it. And back then Creed responded saying, well, if you want it, it's a deal, but it ain't gonna happen. And it's like, man, just seeing that flashback makes it even crazier to see these guys go at it now. Because we knew about the Eurasian Republic imprisoning mutants and using them as tools, but prior to Ultimate Wolverine, we never really heard the story about members of the opposition having to go up against their old friends. But even still, seeing these two guys go at it, it's crazy. Especially in a situation where it's like Sabretooth is the good guy, because he's the man of his word who cooks for kids and makes them Shirley Temples. But outside of that, and the man bun. But outside of that, this fight between Sabretooth and Wolverine, it is as visceral as you would expect, because Wolverine's getting plenty of slices in, while Sabretooth's throwing Wolverine all over the place, and it eventually comes to the point where Sabretooth is able to get that mask off. And when he does, he tells Logan, if I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna look you in your face when I do it, run. And when he takes the mask off of Logan, dude looks like an absolute mindless animal. And even though we got a glimpse of what's going on inside his mind in the last issue, when he nearly regained control, we know on the outside this dude is insanely dangerous, because before you know it, he just leaps right at Sabretooth, sending his claws right through him, while biting out a piece of his throat, which I don't know if that's his tongue or what, that Wolverine just pulled out from the inside before he just spits it out. And this has Sabretooth to the point where it's like, okay, he needs a moment. And I'd even say with how all of this went down, that Sabretooth was holding back quite a bit. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But then it's here where the driver shows up, and it's Black Widow. So she hits Wolverine with a dart and kicks him back, but we more or less knew that she was one of the opposition's only drivers because of what we saw back in issue 3 when she met up with Gambit and Kitty Pryde, so it makes sense for her to show up here and be one of the only drivers that they have available. And even with that said, this is one of the first times that we've seen her in action, even though we knew she was capable because of her history prior to joining the opposition. But with her helping out here, Sabretooth doesn't understand how Wolverine is knocked out, or why Wolverine's healing factor is suddenly not working. And that's where Leech kind of pokes his head up and he's like, yeah, that's me. I did that. Which again, throughout the course of this, is just a nice way to show what Leech and Artie are capable of. And following this, as Sabretooth helps to carry Wolverine out to the car, he tells Natasha, oh, I'm going with you. Because he wants to see everyone's face when they come through the door with this guy. Alright, so this picks up after the throwdown between Ultimate Wolverine and Ultimate Sabretooth, where Sabretooth won after getting the assist from Leech, who shut down his healing factor, in addition to Natasha hitting Logan with a trank. So hey, at the end of the day, a win is a win. But this is what led to Sabretooth and Natasha taking Logan back to the opposition in hopes of freeing his mind from the control of Directorate X. And when we come back, we're once again in Logan's mind, with him hearing a voice, again. Though this time it's very different with the voice speaking directly to him, with it saying, "I wear the chains I forged in life. I made it link by link, and yard by yard. I girded it of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it." And as this continues, we'll learn more about who this voice is as it guides him through this prison in his mind. But it goes on to say here, "Is its pattern strange to you? That's Dickens' friend, Charles Dickens. It's been in my mind these last few moments. As have you." And when this voice says this, the chains holding Logan in the cell, they just fall off easily. And I want to come back to this in just a moment. But before that, this person goes on to tell him, "Logan, your shackles are loose, but you are far from free. You still bear the chains of oppression. I know them well. I wore them all my life. They rattled inside my skull. You have these chains too, Logan. They confuse you, haunt you, control you. I know this too. We were many, we were legion, but now we are one. I am free, unburdened, as you will be. Logan, why don't you remember that name?" And it's right here where it's revealed to us that Logan's getting help from the David Haller of Earth 6160. And there's a few things to unpack from this real quick. Because for starters, when we saw those chains just easily drop off of Logan, that in itself just goes to show the progress that's been made from the start of this series really, with Logan fighting the brainwashing and remembering Kurt's prayer, with him getting that extra push from Kitty, the dreamlike experience where he was a wolf trying to fight his way back. All these things fractured and weakened the control that Directorate X had over him, which then led to Dr. Prostovic taking him down to the Phoenix specimen for repairs, who was the last out of 3 points of control that Dr. Prostovic was using to keep Logan compliant. And at the time, we didn't even see how this went down. All we saw was Logan get thrown back into action sometime after when he attacked Sabretooth. But coming back to the here and now, as a result of everything we've seen since issue 1, Logan has been coming closer and closer to getting his mind back. And that's what Haller's talking about here. And in Haller's case, we'll learn more about him as this continues. But with him telling Logan, "We were many, we were legion, but now we are one," this lets us know at some point for him, much like the Legion of Earth 616, at some point he had thousands of personalities, of whom we've only got to meet a handful of, and others not so much. And I mean, fingers crossed, at some point we'll explore more of this David's abilities, much like we have for the Legion of the main Marvel Universe, in addition to his multiple identities, because really that's one of the sickest things about Legion, that concept of him having multiple identities, each with different powers. Like the time when he mentioned that he has 200 Omega level split personalities in his brain. Like, it's ridiculous. And so for this version, there's a really interesting story that we'll get back to in a moment. But in the here and now, he's just telling Logan that he's been through a version of this. So Haller's gonna guide him through to the other side. And actually, I think it would make more sense if we talk about more of his backstory now, because there's even more twists and turns that we're gonna get into. But throughout the story, we learn more about this version of Legion through some notes written by Hank McCoy, where he says here that David Haller's body was destroyed in a landslide, which also killed his mother and 300 other people, with it mentioning that his father is unknown. But later on, when the opposition was trying to hack into the Eurasian Republic's defense systems, which is something that Hank says they would do regularly, only for the Republic's systems to kick them out shortly after. But in that brief window, the opposition would gather valuable information that they would later use to develop new tactics. But one day when Beast was going through this information, he found a secret code that at first he thought was spyware or some form of malware, but out of curiosity he dug into it and found out that it contained multitudes. And not long after that, he discovered that it was a living consciousness that escaped into the Eurasian Republic's computer systems. So Beast extracted that code and placed it on a local contained server, which is when he discovered that this code was David Haller, who also suffered from a personality disorder, where in addition David will refer to himself as Legion, as in the biblical sense of we are many, we are Legion. And Beast knew right away that Haller was powerful, just given the fact that he survived the destruction of his physical body. So what Beast ended up doing was using AI tools that he had stolen from the Eurasian Republic to streamline David's code and plug the holes to where later on he inserted David into the opposition's mainframe. And at this point, Beast had figured it was worth the risk, because what could go wrong, right? But Beast figured it was worth the risk because David had no love for the Eurasian Republic. And in a way, it was an opportunity for them to help each other, with David helping the opposition and no longer being confined within the Republic's computer systems. And after David's consolidation, he went from calling himself Legion to just calling himself One. And he would go on to help Beast and the opposition to the point where Beast would just plug people into David's system, and he would help them get through PTSD or mind control by quote unquote deleting the bad code. And even though Mikhail Rasputin, who's a person we'll talk more about in a moment, he was a bit hesitant about David, Beast believes had they not recruited David Haller, the opposition would have been destroyed long ago. And as this continues, we'll talk more about Mikhail Rasputin, as well as some other things that are going on in the opposition. But in the here and now, Haller, or One, goes on to say here Logan, why don't you remember that name? You are not a Winter Soldier, yet you answer its call. You are not a specimen or a weapon, yet you allow yourself to be treated and wielded as one. You, my friend, are a prisoner. And when he says this, Logan pops claws only for chains to come out. As Holler continues with saying, you, my friend, are a prisoner because you allow yourself to be. You need to fight, Logan, not for anyone but yourself. You need to see yourself as I see you, lost, not forgotten, and know what I know, that in here, we are not alone. I hear voices, Logan, voices from an unknown source. Though they grow weaker, they are losing their grasp. They whisper of a maker. In a way, I suppose he was. In fact, he was both to me, maker and unmaker. It was he who freed me from my prison, my physical body, but he did not make me whole. That came later, which right there directly refers to the maker being the cause of David's death, and like we saw, Beast is responsible for making David whole, albeit with stolen AI from the Eurasian Republic, which I imagine still has some sort of tie back to the maker. But one goes on to say here, your forgotten friends, they found me, brought me back from the ethereal plane, and now in turn I am helping you in the same way. Ah, the others, the whispers say, they were truly your makers, and more than that, they were your masters, and you, their tool. As a tool, they used you, and they certainly will never let you go, and that is why you must fight, Logan. Use their own tool against them, break free from your chains, and fight. They wounded you, tortured you, stole your very life from you, but you were not fortunate enough to be greeted with the sweet, soft caress of death's kiss. They took your memories, they took your soul. You were always a killer, and they knew that. They knew, and they exploited it, exploited you. But you are in control. Take it back, break through, break free. You are Logan, you know this. Feel it again, feel it in your bones. They've tried to take those from you too. They've bonded your bones with an indestructible metal, a procedure they stole from a dead scientist from another land. Just another upgrade for their tool, but you are not theirs, you never were. And all of this just takes Logan through this sequence, where he's fighting each one of the leaders of the Eurasian Republic, from Colossus to Magic to Omega Red, as he's being told that they are formidable. But Logan is the crack in their armor, so he's told to see it, know it, use it, to the point where he's mastered them as they've mastered him, and to the point where after taking them down, there's still one more, with Holler saying the one within you always, the one who is neither master or mastered, your greatest enemy, who's basically a version of Logan, though it's not quite him. As Holler says, the one who knows your every move, your every secret. This one looks like you, acts like you, smells like you, even thinks like you. But Logan, you must see, you must know, this one is not you. It will never be you. Do you hear me, Logan? You must fight. And as he defeats this false version of himself, Logan then hears someone say, do you hear me? And they keep calling his name till he finally wakes up. And when he does, he finds himself at the opposition's base, with everyone around just kind of waiting to see whether or not Logan's back to being himself. And practically everyone's here, like Beast, Abigail Brand, Sabretooth, and surprisingly, Mikhail Rasputin, the brother of Colossus and Magic, who was believed to have been killed in the incident known as the Mikhail Massacre, who the Eurasian Republic is blaming on Gambit for the most part. So you can just imagine how crazy of a surprise it's gonna be when Colossus and Magic find out that their brother's still alive. And not just that, but the fact that he's working with the opposition. But for all we know, that in itself could be a trick too. But during this time, both him and Abigail Brand cautiously approach Logan, because they're like, okay, we need to know that it's you. And it makes for a very tense moment before Logan's just like, I'm the best there is, before he pops his claws and he finishes the statement, saying, at what I do. And it calms everybody down, because they're pretty much like, okay, he knows the slogan. That's definitely Logan. And after this, sometime later, and still at the opposition base, we find Kitty Pryde, who's been looking for Logan for quite a while, only to find him off by himself on top of this cooling tower, because the others at the opposition thought he had ran away, when really he's just come up here to get some space and think about who he is and what he is, while looking at that Winter Soldier mask. And really, this is that moment that we all knew was coming, because now that Logan has his mind back, we've all had that question in the back of our mind, like how's he gonna handle it when he finds out what he did? And as you would expect, it's tearing him apart, because even with Kitty trying to tell him that that's not who he is, Logan knows that he's a killer, so all they had to do was wind him up and point him where they wanted him to go, which of all places was right back to his own people, which led to the deaths of both Kurt and Raven, among many other opposition members who didn't have any powers. So yeah, and here and now, Kitty tries to give Logan the pep talk and tell Logan how this wasn't you, it was them. And in the case of those who were lost, Kitty just frames it like, hey, they knew what they signed up for. So coming from Kitty, it's important that Logan knows that his friends died at the hand of the Eurasian Republic, who were their oppressors, Logan's oppressors. and it's important that Logan doesn't forget that. But in his case, it's not just what Logan thinks about himself, because there's also the way that the other members of the opposition look at him. They're afraid of him, and honestly, Logan can't blame him. And aside from that, the adamantium that Directorate X had given him, it's always going to be a part of him, like a constant reminder of what he's done. And it even has Logan thinking that he wishes he'd stayed away from the opposition in the first place. And on top of that, he remembers bits and pieces from the intense moments as the Winter Soldier. And he tells her here, they come and they go like memories of a bad dream. They pull at my heart, kid. They're heavy. I feel them hanging over me. And she tells him what I think is one of the most important things here. Because she says, Logan, Kurt and Raven didn't forget you. We didn't forget you. We brought you back because you're one of us. You're family. Do you remember why you joined the opposition? I do. It's because you saw what was happening to other people, Logan. People like you. And you wanted to help them. This is a war, Logan. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Sometimes you do things you never thought you'd do or could do. But you do them because you must. You fight. And damn it, Logan, I've never known a better fighter in my life. You clawed your way free from death itself, man. That's not nothing. But just remember why you did this. Not the bad stuff. Not what they did. Not what they made you do. You made a choice to give up everything, to come here and fight. Remember why. It's hard sometimes, I know. Sometimes the darkness gets a little too close to winning. But that's why we have each other. We're all each other's reminders. Now come on down from here. Mikhail and Abigail have called a meeting. It's a family affair. And yeah, that means you too. So yeah, not only do I feel like Logan needed this talk, but I feel like he needed to hear these things from Kitty Pryde. And now just after this, we head back over to Dr. Prstovic, who is losing it because she knows if the leaders find out that she lost the Winter Soldier, it's a wrap for her. Because now all of the tethers are severed and he is completely off the grid. And while her assistant Anna's on the computer trying to help out, and I mean, Anna might not be like an assistant, probably one of the other scientists or whatever, but there's a moment here where Dr. Prstovic is like, if the leaders find out that he's gone. So Anna's like, okay, let me check one more, and then mid-sentence, her head just slams right into the table. As Dr. Prstovic hears another voice saying, when the leaders finally find out, only for her to look up and see Omega Red, and he's just like, yeah, the leaders have indeed found out. So for a quick moment, the doctor tries to beg and plead her case, but Arcadie's not trying to hear that. So he snatches her up and drags her out of her office, and for a moment here, I want you to put yourself in Dr. Prstovic's shoes. Because even though she works for Omega Red, Colossus, and Magic, she doesn't know everything about them. And even from what she does know, she's not 100% sure of what things are certain. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. Because as Omega Red's dragging her away, he says, here, Ileana, look what the cat's dragged in. And the doctor can hear Ileana's voice far off saying, thank you, Arcadie. We have an appointment to keep with the good doctor. But we will first make a stop. As Magic opens up one of her stepping discs, and she's like, we're making a stop in limbo. And man, Dr. Prstovic is terrified out of her mind, because even though she's aware of what Magic is capable of to an extent, and she's heard of limbo, Dr. Prstovic never knew that limbo was a real place. So now that Magic has taken her there, with the doctor knowing that she'd messed up already, I could just imagine she's thinking like, no, this is it, I'm done, end of the line. But before we continue this, we jump back over to Kitty and Logan for a moment as they're heading to the opposition meeting, where as they do, Logan sees Sabretooth. And as soon as Logan sees him, he's pissed. And the reason why is pretty obvious, because if you guys remember, back in Ultimate Wolverine issue 5, Logan made him promise to kill him if he was taken by the Eurasian Republic, because he didn't want to become one of their puppets. Only for that to be exactly what happened. So in the here and now with Logan getting his head straight, he feels like Victor didn't keep his word. But to be fair, at the time when Logan made him promise, Victor had said something along the lines of like, yeah, it's a deal, but it ain't gonna happen. So an argument could be made that Victor held up his end. But at first here, Kitty doesn't know what's going on, so Victor explains it to her. And then he goes on to tell Logan that he didn't have a chance to do much until he showed up at the bar. And that's when Victor decided that he was gonna try and save him. And he leans in on Logan, he's like, and last I checked, I did just that. And he's basically like, if anything, Logan should be saying thank you. But again, for Logan, it's more so about him knowing how dangerous he is, because he's blacked out before and woken up covered in someone else's blood. So he knew if they got a hold of him, what would happen. But at the same time, with Sabretooth waiting on that thank you, this quickly becomes one of those rare moments where both Wolverine and Sabretooth got a point. And you can literally look at either one of them and be like, well, he's not wrong. And when things get heated between the two, eventually Kitty's able to de-escalate the situation, just before they all arrive at the opposition meeting, being held by Mikhail Rasputin and Abigail Brand. And right off the top, just to get this out of the way, Mikhail says here, if there are new recruits, let me introduce myself. I am Mikhail Rasputin, and I welcome you to the opposition. Those of you who have been with us will notice Logan has returned. Logan was a prime fighter for the opposition, and I believe he will be again, should we be so lucky. That said, I understand there may be some anxiety, maybe some animosity, fear, though the scars of experimentation remain. The Republic's Winter Soldier program has been overwritten by the One. You have no cause to fear Logan. Not anymore. I have quite an education on the subject myself. I too come from the enemy. I was once their ruthless leader, so I know that trust can be earned. It pains me, yes, that I now fight my beloved siblings in this struggle, but they are lost. They pledge fealty to one alone, the dark secret of our world. But the truth was awakened in me, while my brother and sister tortured their own kind. For nefarious means, I knew that a counterweight must be provided to strike back. I had begun secretly coordinating the opposition's strategy with McCoy and Brand, but I took the next step without fear, faking my own death. I teleported clear to safety. It was finished. I no longer took orders from a hidden dictator, pulling strings. Instead, I fight for my country, for my people. I fight for the opposition. But too often it feels like we fight against a tidal wave that dooms all progress, which from here leads to Abigail Brand explaining their next move. But do keep in mind, this whole reveal that we're getting with Mikhail Rasputin being alive and now fully working with the opposition. It's a big deal, and that's something we're going to come back to in a moment. But going forward in this meeting, Abigail Brand lets the members of the opposition know that they're going to be switching up their strategy, because for the most part up to this point, the Republic has put them on the defensive end by deploying new weapons that have caused serious casualties and taken out 2 of their bases. And some of this we've seen during Logan's time as the Winter Soldier and how effective he was, but now with the opposition successfully getting Logan back, Brand feels like the opposition has a huge opportunity here to capitalize on what might be one of the Republic's biggest mistakes, since they rely so much on biological living weapons. And this is why, again, to switch up their strategy, Abigail Brand plans for their next move to be offensive instead of just defensive, with it being designed to take advantage of the Republic's miscalculation. In going into the details of this plan, she goes on to say here, a prison on Snake Island in the Black Sea, known by the name of Stabilny, I think it is, which I want to say is Ukrainian for stable. Dr. Alonia Prostovic has her minions there, experimenting on mutants from across the globe, turning them into abominations. This base appears on no maps or databases. We only know it exists because the One picked up fragmentary coordinates when probing Logan's brain. Local intel verified its existence and provided these photos of prisoners arriving at the location. Locals believe the prison to be a benign government facility. But then to add on to what Brand is saying, Beast comes in to let everyone know that the Republic has increased their presence around the prison, so they're going to have to send in a highly skilled team if they're going to do this right. And now, aside from providing this information, Beast already has a list of prime operatives who he suggests should go, starting with Gambit, Sprite, Guardian, and Widow, as well as Beast, who will be joining himself. But as he's going down the list and using everyone's code names, as he goes down the list, he lets Logan know that he can join them as well. And this just has Logan like, what? I don't get one of them fancy nicknames. So Beast tells him he just hasn't had the chance to select one. So he asks Logan if he has any ideas. Like for example, Mikhail goes by Archangel, and that's where Guardian steps in like, I got it. He can be Rasomaka, the hair, the claws, which then has Logan like, what's that supposed to mean? And that's where Widow tells him that it's Russian for Wolverine. And from there, they're basically like, oh, okay, we're going with it. And from there, Mikhail's like, it is done. What came before was but a prelude, a mere taste of what we mutants and humans together can unleash. No more games. What comes next is victory. But after this, going back to Limbo with Dr. Prostovic, with her asking where am I, and Magic telling her like, oh, come on now, have you not heard of Limbo? It's here where Magic goes on to say like, yes, it is very real, which is why it is best for you not to make mistakes or lose Republic property, because there are hungry things here, and I am too eager to throw them your bones. And this whole time, Dr. Prostovic is just begging Magic to show mercy, with demons surrounding her and pulling her in every direction. But Magic goes on to say here, this is my domain, Dr. Prostovic, my true kingdom. Its demons are my servants, and for your failure, do not think they are not prepared to rip you limb from limb. Scream, Doctor, feel the pain in your joints, the ache in your muscles, feel their fingers tear through your clothes, breaking your skin. But what ends up happening here is this leads to Dr. Prostovic telling Magic that she has a way to destroy them all, referring to the opposition, which from here takes us back to the Eurasian Republic, who is supposed to have this meeting, but Magic and Omega Red are late. And this one guy looks at his watch like, I thought this inquiry was today, only for Colossus to give him this look like, hey, you gonna wait as long as it takes. But we already know why Magic and Omega Red are running late, and they find out moments after when the stepping disc opens up and Dr. Prostovic comes flying through, looking like she been to hell and back. And right behind her, when Magic and Omega Red come stepping through, Magic just snatches the Doctor by her hair, and Magic tells Colossus that the Doctor has a couple things she wants to share, referring to this secret plan. Because Magic wants the Doctor to share this news with everyone. So Dr. Prostovic says here, I've discovered a possibility, a way to harness the power at the heart of Cerebellum. I need time to test, but to use it would mean the utter destruction of the opposition, once and for all. And Colossus is just like, Dr. Bristovic, you have my attention. And now we know inside the cerebellum, there's the brain of Charles Xavier as well as the Phoenix specimen, which likely means that this is going to take us down a path of Dr. Bristovic using the Phoenix to destroy the opposition, or at the least making an attempt to control the Phoenix. But aside from that, with there being elements like Mikhail Rasputin, who left the Eurasian Republic to go with the opposition, as did Widow at one point, as well as the One, where in his case, at no point was David with the Eurasian Republic. But because Beast used stolen AI from the Republic to make David whole, I'm putting them on this list too. But all of these people, just to name a few, they're possible double agents who have gained the trust of the opposition and can either be part of this threat or something else entirely. Because again, I wouldn't be surprised if Charles or Jean were used against the opposition, only for that to turn into an opportunity for Jean or both Jean and Charles to be free. Though I'm not really sure if there's enough left of Charles for much of anything at this point. But after hearing about Dr. Pristovic's plan, next we see what looks like a conversation being intercepted between a Gary and Danny, where Gary's like he was just messing around and trying to look up Chernobyl on maps. But when he did, he found nothing, almost like it was removed so no one would go there because it's still radioactive. So Gary tried again after using an old site like GeoCities. Man, that's a throwback. But that old site gave him the coordinates for a power plant, so he put that into maps, which then took him to the Eurasian Republic, to the spot where Chernobyl should be. So in this message, his friend Danny's like, okay, well, did they scrub the site? And Gary's like, that's what he thought too. But when he went to Street View, there was nothing there either. So Danny's like, okay, you mean like scrubbed footage? And Gary says, no, not scrubbed footage, it's not there. So Danny asks Gary to send him the coordinates, and Gary does. And even Danny's a little nervous, like, man, you're gonna get me flagged by the Eurasian Republic. But they both end up checking it out, in addition to Danny comparing it to the regular search results for Chernobyl. And eventually the both of them are like, okay, this is weird. Only for this to end with Danny asking Gary what the flark is going on over there, and Gary responding, with Gary being the one who started this conversation, with Gary responding saying, dude, I don't know, but it must be big. And so now, as far as locations that we've seen in the Eurasian Republic that look like Chernobyl and are also coincidentally scrubbed from the map, this totally matches the location of the opposition's base. So now this begs the question of who's intercepting this information, and will it be used to catch the opposition off guard? Alright, so following our last talk, when we saw Logan return to the opposition and get his mind freed with the help of David Haller, this soon after led to him getting the codename Wolverine. And this came along with him hearing about the first mission that he would be needed for, when Abigail Brand and Mikhail Rasputin prepped the group for a rescue mission on Snake Island at an off-site prison, where mutants are being experimented on, which the opposition had just learned about from some of the memories recovered from Logan during his time as the Winter Soldier. So with Beast choosing the best of their operatives to head out on this mission, Wolverine was of course among them. But just before they leave, we get this moment where Logan has his monologue, and it's quite literally like him standing in the locker room, getting ready for his first game after returning to his home team. Because now that he has the codename Wolverine, for Logan, he needs to put more behind that. But this continues with him saying here, is this what I am? A soulless monster driven to kill? Or am I something more? Am I worth saving? And he goes on to say, in his birthday suit, once I served with a fella from some island named Genosha. He told me about the history of the place, told me about a 1,000-year-old ritual, not performed anymore, but it was once the law of the land. To become an adult, the people of Genosha would undergo an exorcism. They purged themselves of the past and emerged renewed. If they didn't, they were doomed to a kind of limbo. They were considered unclean, fodder for demons. They stripped down and covered themselves in chalk, a symbol of purification. A priest would feed them fungus that'd make them hallucinate, and they'd set them out in the wild. Then they'd face themselves. After what I'd done as Winter Soldier, I needed something. I'd done bad things before, war's hell as they say, but it wasn't me, and whoever the hell it was, I want him out of me. I want to be clean, free, and I want revenge. I remake myself like the old ritual says. I take the things they use to change me, and I make them mine. I feel something changing in me as I pull on the clothes of my enemy. It's like I'm peeling skin away. It feels raw. I can feel the blood pumping hot in my veins, heart's thumping. I ain't what they said I was, not anymore. Now, I'm reborn. And those sick, and I'm just gonna say sons of biscuits, don't know what's coming their way. So yeah, I gotta say, I love seeing this because for a while I was concerned about how this would go down. Because the whole time we saw Logan as the Winter Soldier, we knew at some point He was going to return to the opposition, fight with the good guys, but after everything he had done, I was concerned that he was going to throw the whole suit away and just be like, I don't want anything to do with the Winter Soldier. But with how this turned out, not only is he renewing his identity, but it's almost like he's taking the weapon he was made into and he's pointing that right back at Directorate X. And after this, as the team is making their way to Snake Island, which is located in the Black Sea, as they get closer, Abigail Brand, she gives her leader's speech here because she's like, listen up, we are heading into enemy territory. We thrive in enemy territory. We are the opposition. We are Strike Team X. Let's make them remember that. And as soon as they touch land, she's like, all right, it's showtime. Move out. Let's free us some muties. And I'll say even now, without a doubt, Wolverine is locked in. And as they approach, Gambit, he takes care of the gate, creating an entrance. And soon after that, he handles the mines too. And it's a pretty spectacular light show, if I do say so. But just after handling the mines, he looks over at Kitty and he says, easy like Sunday morning, Minou, which is Kitty in French, just before she tells him, whatever you say, magic hands. And right there, I'm gonna tell you, I couldn't have been there because I've just been like, oh my goodness, you two. Like magic hands? Okay. Wow. And when they approach, next Abigail calls for Kitty to go up. So Kitty walks through the wall to take a look inside. But when she does, Wolverine takes a couple sniffs and he's like, something's off. Where are the guards? And Widow tells him that she didn't see any. So Logan's just like, there ain't no way they'd leave a top secret prison unguarded. And Widow agrees with Logan because something is definitely wrong here. So now Gambit is freaking out because Kitty just walked inside and they have no clue what she just stepped into. But not after long, Kitty comes back, though I'm sure it felt like forever to Gambit. But when Kitty comes back out, her mouth is covered and she's just like, oh God. And Abigail and the others is like, what? What did you see? And Kitty tells them, bodies. There were bodies everywhere. So now Logan's just like, get the door open. And as soon as they do, they see exactly what Kitty described, because it is a bloodbath in here. And right away, Guardian is like, I thought this was a rescue mission. No, because these guys have yet to see any sign of life. But when Wolverine goes in to inspect the bodies, he finds that they're littered with these very sharp projectile objects. So he pulls one out, takes a couple sniffs, and Kitty asks him if he knows what it is, and Logan just tells her, don't know, but it ain't good. But after picking up this scent, what he does know is that the killer is right down the hall. And as they head down the hall, I gotta say, I like the way that Beast is thinking here, because he just says, I don't know about this, Brand. And Brand just tells him, we get in, we get out. The plan hasn't changed, McCoy. We got us some muties to save. And Beast is just like, I mean, if they're alive. Because since they got here, this whole situation's been looking all bad. So Wolverine proceeds to lead them to whatever this thing is, because they don't know what it is yet, which takes them to this large room and Wolverine's like, it's there. And as they step in on the other side of this room, they see this dude with these huge metal wings saying, I won't let you, over and over again. And just based off of that, Logan's like, yeah, this guy ain't playing with a full deck. And right there, I'm just like, yeah, that's a fair assessment. Like, this guy's got 2 books of possible and a go fish. Like, his rules ain't normal. But Kitty approaches Logan and she tells him, no. Those wings, I remember him from the files. His name's Warren Worthington. He's scared, Logan. He needs help. And then she starts to say, I can, and then she's like, no, we can help. And really quick, I want to point out here that we're also shown an article from 2011 that was published by the Daily Bugle, with it pointing out angel sightings in California, alongside of a number of other locations across the North American Union. And at the start of the article, Warren's described with having the white wings, which immediately caused a number of people to have religious assumptions. And many of these sightings weren't even clear, with people claiming that they had the sun in their eyes, but later on the story changed, as the assumptions grew more negative, with the chief of police saying, we don't know if it's a living creature or a mechanical device, and over time was just referred to as a UFO, or unidentified flying object. But at this time, with Kitty having a level of familiarity with Warren, and again, just based on what she's read from the files, she approaches this like, hey, we need to save this guy just like we did for Logan, more or less. So she makes her way closer and she says, hey, Warren, we're friends. We've come here to, and he just stops her right there because he looks over his shoulder and he says, I won't let you. And he keeps repeating it, only to turn around and flick one of his huge metallic wings and just shower the team with blades. And this happens so fast. Fortunately, Kitty has a split second to make herself intangible so they pass right through. And Wolverine's quick, so he's able to parry with his claws. But in the case of Beast and Abigail Brand, the 2 of them are hit before they even know what happened. And I'm not gonna front, as soon as I saw this, my jaw was dropped. And I was like, what just happened? Because this dude, Warren Worthington, who Directorate X refers to as the Angel Specimen, We'll learn more about him in just a moment, but as it stands for the moment, just think of his abilities like Archangel from Earth 616. Though in this world, Warren didn't get that name, because as we know, Mikhail Rasputin already called dibs on Archangel. But yeah, after this devastating attack, Wolverine and the remaining members of the team go in. And this almost comes across like a group boss fight in a way, because Strike Team X already knows that this dude, the Angel Specimen, he'll one-shot them given the chance. So when every one of these guys go in, they make it count. Because if this was a turn-based match, it'd be like, okay, you got one move. Everyone in the party gets one move. And if it ain't good, you're done. So immediately, Wolverine goes to pin this guy on the ground, because the last thing he wants for the Angel Specimen to take flight in this huge room that's not very well lit. And after that, Widow goes for a shot that disconnects some wiring on the back of Angel's head, just as Gambit takes his shot, and Guardian comes off of the top rope with the hammer time. And all this together allows them to take down the Angel Specimen fairly quickly. And just after they're done, now that they've encountered this current version of Warren Worthington, there's a moment here where Logan kind of mocks Kitty, because just before this popped off, she was like, he needs help. So now Logan's approaching Kitty like, yeah, right, he needs help. And Kitty just tells him, you did, didn't you? Because she had a similar experience when Logan was the Winter Soldier and he came after her. But it's not like she's saying this to make him feel bad, though you can tell he feels some kind of way. But really it's just to tell Logan that this guy deserves a chance just like he got. And Logan says here, I know it's not him, it's this damn country. Messing around with brains, the experiments, I got saved. I came back. Yeah, but how do we know they ain't changed him so much he can't ever go back? And his Widow approaches Beast's body. She's like, this ain't a damsel in distress, kid. It's a freaking horseman of the apocalypse. Which is a nice touch. See what you did there? Understood that reference. And right after that, Wolverine says something here that really shows he's still dealing with a lot of the guilt from what he'd done during his time as the Winter Soldier. Because next he says here, claws, wings. The one thing that matters is how well does it kill. So even if we can, does he deserve saving? Does he even want it? Did I? And without hesitation, Kitty tells Logan yes, he deserves a chance like you did. So Logan's just like, then you better hotwire his brain before he kills you too. But also at this time, Logan's attention is drawn away when he hears a voice coming from upstairs, with it clearly being someone trying to reach out to a Dr. Strugatsky at this prison who's not responding, with it being the voice of who we know to be Director Prestovic, who's reaching out to get an update on the Angel Specimen. And she mentions a few others who we may or may not see down the line, like Moz or Mimic, but the Angel Specimen was definitely the top priority. And we'll learn more about that in a moment. But again, with Director Prestovic reaching out to Dr. Strugatsky, she has the leaders breathing down her neck about it. So she's low-key threatening the doctor to give her something, because if she don't come through, it's a wrap for her. But as Logan approaches the screen, Director Prestovic's like, wait, who is that? Step forward, I can see you there. And as Logan steps forward, she's like, Doctor, if this is your idea of a game, and I'm just gonna say right now, who would even play like that? But as Logan steps closer, she quickly realizes who she's looking at. And she's very relieved to see that he's alive, though for some strange reason, Logan just doesn't share that same sentiment. Like, I wonder why. But this reaction from Director Prestovic, it kind of reminds me of some of the weird moments we got back in Ultimate Wolverine issue 2, where Director Prestovic had often showed this very protective and nurturing nature towards the Winter Soldier, which might have been nothing, but I'm not exactly sure. But nonetheless, she's relieved to see that he's alive. And that could very well just be based on the reasoning of her not wanting magic to send her back to hell. But with Wolverine hearing her voice and seeing her face, he doesn't even take a chance. He just pops his ultimate on that computer like Berserker Rage. And he just tears it to pieces. And when this happens, Kitty's just like, who the hell was that? And Logan tells her somebody who's gonna be dead pretty soon. And right there it's like, oh, okay, cool. And now aside from this, one of the last things that we're shown is a message from Dr. Strugatsky that didn't make its way to Director Prestovic, with it saying here, I am abandoning work on the Angel Specimen immediately, and I am ordering that all testing at the Snake Island underground facility be ended immediately, pending further review. I am making this decision on my own without authorization of the Eurasian Republic or my direct supervisor. You, Director, I understand that this may result in disciplinary action, which I am prepared to confront, but I cannot continue putting my people at risk for the furthering of this weapons program. This next phase, after the loss of the Winter Soldier specimen, has been rushed into the experimentation phase, solely based on the success of the Winter Soldier program. The Angel Specimen is not the Winter Soldier. It is unpredictable and dangerous. His mind is too fragile. He has killed 7 people this week alone, 3 doctors and 4 guards. Last week, he killed 2 doctors, a guard, and one of the other specimens. No matter what we do, we cannot stop his continued penchant for violence. Worse still is the fact that we have replaced his feathered wings, which were dangerous only to those not possessing them once they have taken flight, with wings made of razor-sharp projectiles. What brilliance! We have created our own death sentence. Even now, I can hear his screams, incessant, painful, angry. I hear. And after that, we're just told the alarms went off, there were no survivors discovered on Snake Island, and that the facility was closed pending further investigation. But yeah, just based on the way that message was worded, Dr. Strugatsky was a real one. But now, following this experience, I'm really curious to see how this whole situation with the Angel specimen pans out after he spent some time with David Haller. Alright, so coming back, this picks up after the opposition's insane encounter with Ultimate Angel, Warren Worthington III, which was quite literally a rescue mission gone wrong, which cost the opposition both Beast and Abigail Brand. And as this continues, you can tell that it has some of the heroes kind of nervous about some of their plans moving forward and a bit hesitant, but now is not the time for them to let up against the Eurasian Republic. But coming back, the first thing we see is a carrier sentinel unit making its way back to the Master Mold facility. And now usually how this would work, one of these carrier sentinels would capture a number of specimens or mutants, so they could be distributed to one of the secret prisons like Snake Island and be either studied, weaponized, and enhanced in a similar way to what we saw with Angel, or that mutant will be put into the XS Sentinel program, which we'll talk more about in a moment, because that program is something new that we're introduced to in this issue. But as this carrier sentinel arrives, there are a couple guys here who confirm that it's holding 4 living specimens, but for whatever reason, their communications with this carrier sentinel are muffled. And at one point, one of these guys is like, wait, didn't one of these units go missing? Which right there is like, okay, I see what's going on here. But given the situation, one of these guys is like, you know what? We're just gonna play it safe because everything's probably fine, but we can't be too sure. So they go to check it out, but to be safe, they activate 5 tactical sentinel units to escort them. But even with taking this cautious approach, these guys are still under a ton of pressure because on this particular day, Director Alonia Prestovic, she's visiting the Master Mold facility to inspect the XS units. So as these guys are going to check out this sentinel that's having these issues, it's kind of funny because on one hand, while they're having this sentinel problem that isn't common, it's happening on the same day that their director is on site and inspecting the XS units. So it's kind of funny to see them trip over that. But as they approach this carrier sentinel that they're not able to communicate with for some strange reason, they notice that someone, quote unquote, defaced this unit by putting a huge X on its chest. And I mean, it's pretty obvious to them that this was done by the opposition, but all they can think about now is let's hurry up and clean this up before the director sees it. But before they can even get started on that, the weapon systems activate on this carrier sentinel. So now they're like, oh my god, lock down the platform, we're under attack. But before we see how this plays out, we jump back to the day before, where we find the opposition working on that missing carrier sentinel that we just heard about, with Mikhail Rasputin more or less breathing down Forge's neck, because they need this sentinel to be ready for tomorrow's mission. So Mikhail's like, will it be ready? Forge is like, yeah, it'll be ready. Then Mikhail asks about the upload, and Forge is like, almost there, 6 more hours, give or take. So Mikhail's like, man, I need something more definitive than give or take. So he assures Mikhail that it will be ready, only for Mikhail to hit him with the "it better be," which reminds me of that line from Deuce Bigalow for some reason. But also, I want to mention here, with Forge going by the name of Daniel, I want to say that was supposed to be his name way back in the Uncanny X-Men. So it's nice to see it just right out the gate here. But following this, Mikhail goes on to tell the others, our Forge team has been working tirelessly to crack, reprogram, and modify a CS unit, or a carrier sentinel unit, one of the vast fleet of sentinels the Eurasian Republic has at their disposal. We've likely all come up against one. They are advanced technological killing machines, specifically targeting mutant kind. But this one has something they do not, a ghost in the machine. This is not just a commandeered sentinel. It is a member of your team. The one has graciously suggested that we upload his consciousness into the unit. He will look like one of them, but he will be one of us. And I'll tell you, man, as soon as we started seeing sentinels like outside of Logan's flashbacks in the modern day, I was just like, oh yeah, they're gonna put David Haller in one of these, which is precisely what they're doing, at his request. And Mikhail agreed to this mainly because it falls in line with their next mission, which is to cripple Sentinel production. But as you might expect, some people like Kitty are nervous about running into a killing machine factory. And I can only imagine that there's just more pushback after the whole Angel incident. But Logan's able to pick up rather quickly the fact that Mikhail hasn't told them everything just yet. And that's where Mikhail goes on to tell them, we have received intelligence that mutants have been captured and brought to the Master Mold, the central Sentinel manufacturing and testing site. this intelligence suggests that Directorate X are finding ways to biologically meld mutants to a Sentinel unit. They are calling these abominations XS units. We do not know how many mutants were taken or how many have been tested on. Not yet, but we will save who we can and ensure that atrocities like these never happen again. The secure facility is almost completely automated, operating with a skeleton crew for one reason. It's a trap. A gamma bomb lives in its heart to destroy its secrets and any intruders lucky enough to survive entry. It's quite brilliant, really. I designed it myself. We will have 5 minutes once the alarm is tripped to locate the captured mutants before the facility self-destructs. It won't fully dismantle their Sentinel program, but it will make them hurt. And now this brings us right back to the present day, with us seeing the carrier Sentinel, or the One, blasting one of the tactical Sentinels just before opening up and letting out Sabretooth, Kitty, Wolverine, and Widow, which now just has the handful of guys who work here losing it because this is literally their worst nightmare come true. And when one of these guys set off the alarm, we quickly jump over to Director Prstovic, who's currently checking out the XS units with Dr. Lysenko. And when this guy hears the alarm going off, much like the other handful of employees who work here, he's terrified because at the Master Mode facility, these guys are constantly in fear of this place being destroyed and all of them going with it because it was designed that way. But at first with Director Prstovic, when she hears the alarm going off, she's just like, this must be some kind of mistake. This is the most highly secure facility in the world. Just override the self-destruct sequence, because to her, there's no way they're actually being attacked. But then when she takes a look out of the nearby window, she sees a very familiar specimen of whom she once referred to as the Winter Soldier, who right now has just finished destroying a tactical Sentinel. And in this moment where she sees Logan, it makes me think of those horror movies where someone's peeping out of the window and they see the monster or the killer off in the distance. Just before that monster or whatever looks right into the camera, that's how this plays out for Director Prstovic. Because as soon as Logan sees her, he's like, you! And he makes a beeline straight for her. And it almost comes off in this moment like she's so terrified that she can barely move. And it is possible that that's part of what we're seeing here. But even now, much like what we've seen from the start of this series, Prstovic has always had, and even still has, this unique interest in Logan. I'll just put it that way, because I've speculated on it before as far as why she might be this way with Logan, as well as the possibility of her wanting to turn on the leaders of the Eurasian Republic, because for all we know, she might have secretly been a mutant this whole time, like some people who we're not going to talk about. Looking at you, Moira McTaggart. But again, there's a number of things that could be behind this, and the only thing that is for certain is that there's something extra there. But right now, Logan is locked in and he is relentlessly trying to get after her, only to suddenly be hit with this concussive blast that comes out from the lab Director Prstovic's in, and it's a blast that came from one of their XS Sentinels, who appears to have the head of Cyclops, Scott Summers, inside of it, which just looks insane. And I have some thoughts on this that we'll come back around to in a moment. But when Logan goes flying out, fortunately he's caught by Legion, or the One, which allows him to swing back over towards the lab. And now with Director Prstovic, even though she should be trying to get up out of here, once again she shows that obvious yet strange fixation on Logan that's been there since his time as the Winter Soldier. And now I've gone into my theories in the past on what exactly this could be based on, so I'm not going to go too deep into that again here, but I will say that it's interesting how this has been so consistent, because we saw it when Logan was with the Eurasian Republic, and even after Logan was freed and back with the opposition, where he has made it very clear that he's ready to get her out of here. But on the director's end, it's like something happens where she's gone back into this state where it's like she's mesmerized and everything's moving in slow motion for her, even in situations where she's just inches away from death. But for those who are still attached to reality, like Dr. Lysenko here, he knows that Mikhail has designed this place to evaporate 5 minutes after any attack. And at this point, he knows they've already lost precious time. But when he tries to get Dr. Prstovic to move it, she's just like, but the Winter Soldier. So he tells her, the Winter Soldier is the one that got away. Let him die in the explosion. And there's literally no time to argue about it. So from there, they get moving, and the doctor calls for XS units 1 and 2 to go with them, protect the director, and basically lock in on her exit route to make sure that she makes it out alive. And now Wolverine, he swings back to the window of the lab just in time to see them leave. So he just ends up making his way around to cut the doctor off before she makes it to her transport, just before he takes a couple sniffs that cause him to pause for a moment, only to get intercepted again by XS units 1 and 2. And just like before, Director Prstovic, she's sticking around to watch Logan. And I'm telling you, this is a next level fixation because the Master Mode facility is getting ready to be destroyed in like a minute and some change at this point. And I mean, aside from her, I do gotta get on Logan for a little bit because he knows him and his team were working on a clock and that this gamma bomb was gonna wipe this place out at the end of that 5-minute timer. But even still, he took this detour to go after Director Brestovic, even with knowing that the chances of him getting out of here would be made even slimmer with doing so. But this time around with Logan going up against XS Sentinel 1 and 2, which again, man, the fact that they did Cyclops this dirty, with him looking like Krang from Ninja Turtles. And I imagine at some point we'll get that story of how Cyclops got here, because since we've been covering nearly this entire Ultimates universe, there's been a good 50+ years of events that we've only scratched the surface of. Because when it comes to the Maker, when he established these different territories like the North American Union, that started after 1963, after the assassination of JFK, right before they did away with the United States of America. And this was very close to the time where the number of mutants being born in North America, which again is now the North American Union, was getting ready to boom, only for us to find out years later that the number of mutants in this region are drastically lower than what they should have been. And it's like you just know there's a crazy story to be told here that would eventually lead to the origin of the opposition, since most of the members of that organization are mutants who came from that North American region. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them were just born into this chaos, either in the 80s, 90s, or 2000s. And I mean, with the exception of Logan, who was likely there through the whole thing. So hopefully we'll learn more as more of his memories come back. But yeah, I can't express how ready I am to learn more about how exactly all this went down, especially after seeing what they did with Scott Summers, which I imagine took place more recent. And I mean, that's not to say that I'm an expert at carbon dating heads that are sitting in stomachs, but I do believe that this happened while he was a member of the opposition, perhaps trying to save Jean or the Professor, but who knows. And it might have been even more recent than that, with Kitty mentioning how they've seen more Sentinel attacks, and this new XS Sentinel project being so new, to the point where they're still being tested. And the XS units we see here are number 1 and 2. But yeah, no matter how you look at it, it's messed up. But even still, tell us more. But at this present time, with Logan going after Director Brestovic, he just destroys one of these XS Sentinels. And it's the one that doesn't have Scott's head in it. The one with the torso that looked human. And let me know if you guys think this was made from another mutant. And I mean, I have my thoughts, but I want to see what you guys say in the comments. But now with Logan taking one of them out, now it's just him versus the head formerly attached to Cyclops, who once again catches Logan with the optic blast before returning to Director Brestovic as her and Dr. Lysenko get ready to make their exit. And you can tell the doctor's feeling a bit better because he's like, oh, relax. He's dead. The Winter Soldier's dead. But the director just tells him, nah, you don't know him like I do. And I'm sure the doctor's like, well, I'll tell you what I do know. This gamma explosion's gonna handle the rest. But fortunately, Wolverine is roped up and he's able to make a quick recovery, only to head back to the rooftop or the top of this platform, just in time to see the director get away. So now, with the opposition having less than a minute to get out of here, we do see that they were able to save at least a couple of mutants, which again was one of the top 2 objectives of this mission. But with less than a minute till detonation, Mikhail's asking Sabretooth where's Wolverine, just before Wolverine shows up. But I'll say I literally laughed out loud, like audibly, when Sabretooth was like he probably saw a squirrel that got him running. Cause that's quite literally what happened. As soon as Logan saw Director Brestovic, he was gone. Like his animal instincts just took over. But even still, this is one of those cases where I wouldn't say it was necessarily a bad thing, because if those XS units weren't busy with Logan, then they might have gotten to some of the others who wouldn't have fared as well against that optic blast. So at least Logan was able to keep them busy. And at this point, they all finally get into the Carrier Sentinel, and David gets them out of there before this Master Mode facility is completely wiped off the map. Alright, so coming back, this picks up with a conversation between Wolverine and Sabretooth at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant located in the western territory of the Eurasian Republic, which, as we've seen, this is the opposition's base, which was taken off the digital grid by David Haller, so the opposition could use it as a base to operate from. So this is their safe space. But coming back, we find Victor approaching Logan to have a talk with him. And already Victor's like, Logan, I can tell you're not really sleeping. So if this ain't a good time, and that's where Logan's like, good time? They still make those? So jokingly, Victor's like, you know, they're just temporarily out of stock. But I gotta say, it is nice to see these two guys in this warm-hearted, brotherly setting, as opposed to the last couple of Sabretooth Wolverine conversations we've had recently. But then it's here where Logan asks Victor what's going on. This is where Victor tells him, I came with some news. I guess I came to say goodbye. I'm leaving Logan. And of course, Logan sees this like Victor's abandoning the opposition, with Victor choosing to willingly walk away. And that's where Victor's basically like, hear me out. Let me talk. This ain't easy. So Logan's like, all right, talk. And that's where Victor tells him the 2 kids I was hiding in Smolensk, Artie and Leech, they ain't over the border. They're still here, partly because I asked them to stay. They're like us, ain't got no family. I took a liking to them, and since they ain't got no one and I ain't got no one, well, we sort of became, I don't know, family, I guess. Close to it anyway. I look after them, and I just know that there's no future for them out there, and if they stay, they may die. Who knows what the Eurasian Republic has planned for us? I'm gonna take them away somewhere safe, raise them, protect them, give them a good life, away from this. And that's where Logan asked Victor if he told Mikhail, and Victor tells him no, I can't. I know the speech he'd give me. The moment's more important than the individual. But these are good kids, Logan, and I care about them. And Logan tells him, well, sound like you made up your mind. Can't say I blame you. But this ain't a good time for the opposition. We've been taking losses. And Victor tells him, I know, I see that, but I don't want these two to be among them. And then Victor's like, look, I know you think that I didn't keep my promise to you, but I tried. I went digging and I found this. It's called the Muramasa blade. Legend has it that it can cut keener than any other blade made by man. They say it can cut through the soul. They also say it may be the only thing that can actually kill one of us healers. And as Logan inspects it, he's nearly speechless. But Victor continues saying maybe you can give it to Kitty or Mikhail just in case. And all I ask in return is that you make me a promise. So that's where Logan's like, what kind of promise? And Victor tells him, don't tell no one about me and the kids. Give us time. Let us disappear. And that's where Logan's like, that I think I can manage. But then after this, when we head back over to the leaders of the Eurasian Republic, it's here where we find Colossus, and he's big mad because he's just now getting the news about his brother Mikhail Rasputin, who was caught on some footage leading the opposition on their last strike. And so prior to this, or better yet before Mikhail joined the opposition, he stood alongside Colossus, Illyana, and Arcady. And as we were told back in Ultimate Wolverine issue 3, it wasn't until the Mikhail massacre, which took place in spring of last year, which was also like Gambit's debut as an opposition member. Man, I would have loved to have seen it. But it wasn't until the Mikhail massacre where Mikhail faked his death and fully joined the opposition, who prior to that he had been helping from the other side. And I'll admit, up until this point, I had my suspicions of Mikhail being a double agent, because I was thinking like, what if he's just building up the opposition numbers so the Eurasian leaders could just hit them all at one time? But that's not what's going on. Because when Colossus gets this message, he's also told that they were only able to get a piece of the footage and that the signal was disrupted, and then Colossus just punches a hole in this guy. Because not only is he pissed, but he's tired of excuses. So this is where director Prestovic follows up with some solutions, because she's not about to go out like this guy just did. So she steps forward and she tells Colossus that her team has found something of interest. And that's where Colossus is like, then interest me, director, with the blood all over his hands. But the director goes on to say here, we tasked 3 Sentinel units to survey the western border. They found nothing out of the ordinary until we realized it was not ordinary at all. This plot of land I'm showing you here is the Chernobyl power plant. And Colossus, he's looking, but he's like, I failed to see the humor in your joke, director. There is clearly nothing there. And she's like, precisely, there should be, but it's gone missing somehow. A digital search also came back the same way. Empty land. However, I took the liberty of sending a small reconnaissance team with analog equipment, and they came back with this. The plant still exists, only it's missing from all databases and files and will not appear on any digital photography or scans. So Magic's like a telepath? And the director tells her of a sort, one who can manipulate cyberspace, but further analog reconnaissance at the area has uncovered a small group working at the plant, working primarily at night, moving pallets of aid and weapons in and out, trucks carrying individuals. But then it's here where Omega Red steps in, telling director Prestovic that plant is dead. And he says here the core was breached and the plant was abandoned. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. And that's where she's like, perhaps there's a mutant who can absorb the residual radiation, or that too was a deception. However, I do believe that this is genuine. We have discovered the hidden headquarters of the opposition. So after this announcement, which is crazy because we know it's true and we know that is the opposition's base, but after the director shares this, Colossus just cuts to the chase. And he asks, are you insinuating that we should drop your Cerebomb bomb on the plant? And director Prestovic tells him no, the bomb is not ready. Another 2 weeks at least, perhaps 3 or 4. We are making progress, but using it now would be folly. Then she's asked, so what then, director Prestovic? We twiddle our thumbs till you are ready? But when she starts to tell them how she believes this is an opportunity, Illyana and Arcady cut in like, oh yeah, this is an opportunity, alright, for a ground assault. And Omega Red couldn't be more excited. So later on that evening, or closer towards the night rather, when we head back over towards the Chernobyl plant, it's here where we see Logan watching Victor and the kids head out. But as they're leaving, Victor sees something, and it's not something good. because seemingly out of nowhere, a ton of missiles come flying in, and Logan gets a better view of all this than he would have liked to, because all of these missiles are heading right for him. But in Victor's case, his priority is the safety of Artie and Leech, so he makes sure to get them out of there. But on the other hand, with Logan, this sneak attack definitely has him tumbling down to the ground. Though fortunately, he doesn't land too far from the Muramasa blade, but as soon as he looks up, he sees Omega Red, who's just like you. I know you. You forget your way home, yes? Our little winter soldier. And it just looks like Omega Red has the whole Eurasian Republic behind him, because he's brought multiple Sentinels in addition to a ton of armed soldiers. And it's funny because there's a moment here where both Logan and Arcady look over to the side at the Muramasa blade, and just the looks on their faces say so much, because Logan's looking at it like, ooh, I need that. But right here, Arcady's only looking at it because Logan's looking at it. So it's almost like he's thinking, well, why does the Winter Soldier need that? And when Logan goes for it, he's snatched up by Omega Red just before he can reach it. And as Arcady goes to pick up the blade, he tells him like, Winter Soldier, you have gotten sloppy in your work. Director Prostovic may be able to fix that for you. So as you can tell, they still see value in taking Logan back. But also to Omega Red, Wolverine is just a piece of property that got away, nothing more. And then when Arcady picks up the Muramasa blade, he's like, in this, you want it. What is it, Winter Soldier? A sword? But what does this sword? And right there, Logan stops him like, none of your damn business, bub. Right as he pops his claws and cuts himself free. And just before he gets to slicing into Arcady and taking the blade back. And right there, just like, man, you done messed up. So right away, Arcady uses some of the soldiers that he brought to absorb their life force and restore himself, which I imagine is the only reason why he brought these guys in the first place, just for the extra HP, which says a lot about how this Omega Red goes to battle, and dare I say, what he thinks of his own people. And that's going to be pretty important when we get to some of the extra details towards the end of this issue. But in the here and now, Arcady tells Logan, your friends, they abandoned you, which could be in a way referring to Victor, who had a good reason to take off. But then when we look back at Logan, this guy's got the opposition right there with him, including the newer recruits like Angel and Iceman. And so Mikhail asks Omega Red like, hey Arcady, have you come to join us too? Which I mean is clearly not the case, but it is a funny way to start the conversation. But Arcady's like, no Mikhail, you have betrayed the Republic, your family. Treason is a crime punishable by death. But you commit treason against your brother and sister and your friend. I have come to destroy you. And Mikhail is just like, you are, as ever, mistaken, old friend. Which in a way I'd say just goes to show how confident Mikhail is in the opposition, especially with their new additions, as they go up against Omega Red, as well as the Sentinels he's brought with him and the soldiers. But then there's a moment here where we cut away from the action, and we head back over to Colossus, who looks to be having a very chill moment here. Like as soon as I saw this, it looks like he listening to some looking out across the nighttime. The city wakes a sleepless eye. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. Hear her voice. And then somebody walks in, talk about Leader Rasputin. And Colossus is like, what? But no, seriously, they come telling him, I'm sorry to bother you, but I have news. And that's when they walk in and approach him with a box, while saying, from the Chernobyl operation, sir, only this box has returned thus far. It says it's from your brother, Mikhail. And he tells Colossus that he didn't look inside. So first Colossus reads the note that's on top from Mikhail with it saying, dearest brother and sister, I must return your gift as I found it unacceptable. And as he opens the box, I know, what's in the box? But as he opens the box, he looks inside and it's Arcady's head, which was removed by Logan with the Muramasa blade. But after Colossus sees this, he's pissed. And then he reads the last part of the letter, which says, do not send a Rosovich to do a Rasputin's job. So yeah, you know Colossus is about to get active after this. But another thing that we're shown here is a newspaper article that mentions the ancient Hinokuni sword has gone missing. And this gives us a bit of the history of the ultimate Muramasa blade leading up to modern day. And even though there is no date on this particular news article, it appears to have been published during the time when Logan was still the Winter Soldier, during the time when Victor was still looking for a solution, or at least that's the safe bet on the time period. Because also the picture in the article is like from Ultimate Invasion, just before the city was attacked by a future duplication glitch army. But as far as what we're told in this article, which mainly has quotes from Emperor Yoshida's spokesperson, who's likely Viper, but it goes on to talk about the history of the Muramasa blade, but in a very general sense, with it mentioning how the sword was forged by the master swordsmith and warrior Muramasa, and how it was used by him in the legendary raid of Okinawa. which left Muramasa and 10,000 others dead. And it mentions here how over time the sword grew a reputation and how it was called the Demon Blade, and how over time rumors grew about the sword being cursed, because many of the swordsmen who owned it after fell to unfortunate deaths. But all in all, the Sun Emperor believes the sword was stolen by his enemies. And he has a lot of enemies, so that doesn't really narrow it down. But his spokesperson went on to say, "Our enemies wish to wash our culture from history, to destroy us, but we will not, cannot allow that to happen. We are a formidable people, and those who wish ill on us will find that out firsthand." So yeah, whenever this article came out, this was the Sun Emperor and Viper and the Silver Samurai letting everyone know that they're not going to let this slide. And aside from this, we see breaking news from August 30th, where when this came out, Omega Red was still alive, and he had basically done an interview where he denied the claims that were dished out coming from the American Union's publication called The Paper, which as we know is backed by J. Jonah Jameson and Ben Parker. And this whole interview was really just him talking about how it's all fake news, because there were even times where the paper had mentioned how witnesses said that Omega Red didn't show up till after the fight in certain battles, which really just goes back to what I said earlier about Omega Red not caring for his people. Because even with him trying to express how the paper is just lying about him being this dirty fighter who sacrifices his men and basically steals their valor, Omega Red is fighting for his life in his interview to make it seem like he's the hero. And I'll admit, seeing this, it has me thinking back on things like how ready he was to get out there and go after the opposition, as if it were a way just to make him look better. Because now, after knowing that Ben and Jonah had basically exposed this guy, it makes it hard to believe that he's as brave or as noble as he would claim to be. And it also makes the last few words of Mikhail's note hit a little bit harder too. Alright, so this picks up with a speech from Mikhail Rasputin that's being broadcasted to the people of the Eurasian Republic, which right off the bat is a really big deal, with Mikhail being the sibling of Colossus and Magic, who everyone believed was killed in the Mikhail massacre. Hence the name. So to open up with him giving this speech, it has everyone listening. As he goes on to say here, it started small, as these things do. Started by organizing, gathering, learning. We were a secret club at first, idealistic. In order for our delicate house of cards to stand, we formed a strong foundation to build upon. Loyalty was necessary. Loyalty, honesty, trust. These things aren't a given. They must be earned. And we earned them. It took time, but we proved ourselves worthy of it. Snippets of information would break through the propaganda. Change was coming. It was in the air. But change can often be violent. Change breaks bones, minds, hearts. But the people, they heard the call, soft as a whisper, a trickle in its infancy. It flowed into a rushing river. And all rivers, though rough, winding, and rocky in their route, lead to freedom, the sweetest of words. But like honey on a bear's paw, it's a most delicate thing. Our opponents know that freedom means death to them. They know that a caged beast fights the fiercest, but face to face, the oppressed and the oppressor become one and the same. Two beasts, one way forward. One lives and one dies. And now currently both Magic and Colossus are watching this live stream. And like we saw before, they're already aware of the fact that Mikhail's still alive, so that part's no surprise to them. But Mikhail goes on to say here, so it's time we reveal ourselves. No more whispers or secrets. We are the opposition. We have fought and we have died for our freedom. And it is your choice now to decide how you want to live. Join us. Or, and right there, Colossus is just like, I don't want to hear the CTA, cut it off. But to Magic, she's like, Mikhail wasn't wrong when he said two beasts and one way forward, because she's like, nice of him to account for the both of us. Because in this very moment, Director Prostovic is preparing the Cerebomb bomb to be used on the opposition. Because like we saw in the last issue, she found their base of operations after discovering the missing power plant in Chernobyl was actually physically still there. And now as it stands, after they sent Arcady or Omega Red to go attack the opposition, they have since left the power plant in Chernobyl and now they're on the move. So for the foreseeable future for the opposition, they no longer have the advantage of having a secure base. So to carry out this attack, which they're calling Operation Serpent Hunt, they're assigning their best and brightest to this mission because there's only one Cerebomb bomb, with it being made from the brain of Charles Xavier, so they only have one shot. So for this reason, only Director Prostovic and a couple others know about Operation Serpent Hunt, which if you guys remember, back when Magic took Director Prostovic on that little field trip to Limbo. At the time, this was a result of the opposition having a bit of a win streak, from safely transporting mutants to more recently at this point getting Logan back. But it was at this time when Magic literally put some fire underneath the director's butt to get her to step things up. And that's when we found out that she was going to prepare the Cerebomb bomb. So for the director, it's quite literally how Mikhail described this whole scenario. Because if this Cerebomb bomb doesn't work, she's done. So to carry this out, specific directions are given to the pilot. He's given the coordinates, and he's told here Leader Ilyana will open a portal. You will fly into it. She will drop you into enemy airspace. You will get the jump on them. You will drop the bomb, then you are home free. And that's when the director goes to tell him, remember, this is an untested weapon. We only have one. I do not know the terminology, but maintain height and leave quickly. We do not know the strength of the blast. And right away, Magic opens this huge portal. Like she can't wait. Like, come on people, let's go. And that's where the pilot heads out. And now after this, we head over to the opposition's current temporary base, where we find Gambit answering the phone call, where he's like, hello. And he asks them if they know the time, which is like their passcode thing. And once they tell him, he's like, all right, now we're cooking with grease. Who this? But as it turns out, it's a call for Logan. And the person who's on the other end of the call just happens to be Victor, who was previously working with the opposition, and we last saw him in issue 10, when he gave Logan the Muramasa blade just before leaving with Artie and Leech because he was concerned for their safety. And they were all able to slip out just as Arcadie's attack began. So now with him calling, on one hand this lets Logan know that Victor and the kids are okay. But on the other hand, Victor tells Logan here that he saw Mikhail give his message, which is what let him know that they made it out safely. But then when he tells Logan here that things are getting crazier than usual, which at first has Logan like, yeah, nah, you're not wrong. Then Logan admits that he doesn't think Miguel's announcement about the opposition was such a good decision. So Victor's like, yeah, I know, you've always been a lone wolf. But then Logan tells him, look, I got Rosovich, took his head clean off with the blade you gave to me. And I think Mikhail's on a victory lap for herself because of it. Shouldn't be. These Rasputins ain't the quitting type. We hit him hard, made him look like a bunch of fools. Weak, got their country turning on them, the world, all at the hands of their own brother. They ain't gonna let that slide, Victor. And that's where Victor's like he's their brother. You don't think he knows them better than you? An outsider, looking in. And Logan's like, of course he knows them. That's not the point. He's getting cocky, Victor. You know what that means. And Victor's like, he's getting sloppy. And that is exactly what Logan's talking about here. So he tells Victor, I don't think we should stay here. We gotta keep moving. There ain't no telling what the Republic knows. And right there, Victor's like, you think there's a rat? And I'm gonna tell you right now, I do. I feel like that person who talks at the TV in the middle of a scene. There's a rat, Logan. Somebody ratting. Well, right there, Logan's like, I don't know what I think. Maybe not. Probably not. I worry sometimes. They took stuff. People. Places. I worry they took it out of my brain. Out of someone else's. Tracked us somehow. And it's right here where Logan catches a whiff of something unfriendly, as a bright circle opens in the sky with a jet flying through. And at first there's this shock of like, okay, what is that? And that's even what Black Widow says here. But at a closer look, Wolverine's just like, bomb. So right away he tells the others, they know we're here. They got a bomb. Evacuate. And he runs over to David Haller, who's known as One. And he tells him, hey, numero uno, I need you to take me up in the air. Now. And as Logan hops aboard the transport Sentinel, Mikhail's like, what are you doing? We need the transport to, and Logan just tells him no time, gotta try and stop it. And he tells Mikhail to try to get everyone out of here, in case he can't. So Mikhail quickly tells everyone to evacuate, as Logan steps in and he gets strapped down, and he tells One, all right, like he's ready. And David just kind of looks at him for a moment. So Logan just starts punching the top of the cabin like, fly, you bucket of bolts. Like, let's go. What you waiting on? And just like that, they're up and away, heading straight for this jet. And now we were told before, this pilot is one of the best the Eurasian Republic has. Or better yet, their best pilot. So when Wolverine and David close in, this dude just maneuvers right around them on some Top Gun danger zone type stuff. And back on the ground as Mikhail's trying to get as many people out of there as he can, Gambit comes to tell him that they don't have any more room. The truck's filled with ammo, so they can't take anyone else. So right there, Mikhail grabs him and he's like, make the room. So Gambit tells him we can try. But this just goes to show how much Mikhail cares about getting everyone out of there. And I have some other thoughts I want to add to that we'll talk about in a moment. But right now, back up in the sky, Logan's telling One, like, come on, let's get him. So they turn around and head down after this jet, full speed. And as the opposition and everyone with them is still trying to get situated to get everyone out of there, Logan's closing in on this jet. But at this point, the pilot is locked on his target. He's got confirmation to drop the bomb, and things really get tense here. Because back on the ground, as Mikhail and the others start looking up, Logan and One nearly got their hands on the jet, and the Cerebomb bomb is released. And when Logan sees that bomb fall, he just reacts. And I mean, at this point, with him just diving after the bomb, I'm not really sure what the plan is, or even if there was one, because it's almost like as soon as he saw it drop and he was like, I gotta do something, because there's really no time to think about what can be done at this point. But as he's diving for it and everything turns white, we see the different members of the opposition either looking up or saying their goodbyes just before the Cerebomb detonates. And after the blast, it just sends Logan tumbling. afterwards he goes back to the others and there's just bodies everywhere. Everyone's laid out. And when I first saw this, my jaw dropped. I was like, come on, ain't no way, man, come on. And for a moment I was like, where's Mikhail? Because you know I had my suspicions of him being a double agent who had been given the task of rounding up the opposition all in one place so they could be killed. And when we learned about the Mikhail massacre, he faked his death in a very similar way. But as it turns out, his body is physically here and he's gone just like everyone else. But after what Logan said to Victor over the phone about how Logan was worried about someone taking things out of his brain or out of someone else's, this had me thinking like, man, what if Logan and Mikhail are both missing some crucial information? Because if it turns out that Mikhail was brainwashed into believing that he was good, so he would betray the Eurasian Republic and join the opposition just to set them up, I wouldn't put it past Ultimate Ilyana to set up something dark like this, because she's more than proven herself to be pure evil in this universe. Especially in Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion, where she's ready to kill a child without batting an eye. And it's funny how when we saw the reaction that Colossus had after he found out about Mikhail, Magic on the other hand showed little to no emotion. So yeah, and I'm sure it's gonna get brought up in the comments, like, hey, what about David? Doesn't the one make sure that everyone's mind is good when they join the opposition? Well, for starters, we don't even know if they did that for Mikhail, since he was helping the opposition from the inside before he switched. And secondly, there's been a few moments here and there where it doesn't seem like David is the sharpest tool in the shed. But regardless, I'm not trying to point any fingers, because at the end of the day, I was hoping to see so much more of these guys, and now just to see them all get wiped out, it just has me thinking like, man, you can't never get attached to mutants in Marvel Comics, because there's a massacre coming at some point, and anyone who's nearby, they're gonna catch it too, mutant or not. And to be honest, it's almost like a 2-for-1, because Logan is no stranger to pain, loss, survivor's guilt, so it's like the massacre and his suffering from the loss of his friends and loved ones is like a 2-for-1 package deal. And now back over with the leaders of the Eurasian Republic. We see Colossus and Magic get the news that it was a direct hit and the opposition is no more. And director Prestovic goes on to say, initial reading suggests the Cerebomb performed exceptionally well. Perhaps we should utilize the Phoenix specimen for a similar weapon. And that's where Colossus is like, very good, this is very good. But even now, Magic, she's already prepared for the next step. Because she says here, it is a victory, brother. This is true. The opposition may be dead, but the infection has spread. And my children in Limbo grow hungry. Because now with so many people turned against them, Magic is ready to send these people to Limbo in waves. And I can see her making an announcement, not like Mikhail's, but Magic gonna be like, nothing beats a Limbo holiday, because right now I'm sending 50 demons per person. Alright, so this picks up just after the Ultimate Mutant Massacre from issue 11, when Dr. Prestovic and the Eurasian leaders dropped the Cerebomb on the opposition, with it basically being a telepathic nuke made out of the brain of Charles Xavier that killed nearly all the characters we had grown attached to from the start of this series. Like Kitty, Gambit, Widow, Mikhail, all of them, gone. And the only two who survived this attack were Logan and Sentinel-1. And now coming back, we find the two of them heading to the Eurasian Republic to exact revenge. And as they make their way, we get a peek into Logan's thoughts here with him saying, deja vu, that's what they call it. Keep feeling like I'm living the same day again and again. Same nightmare. Every time I feel like get on top, something comes and smacks me back down again. It's like the universe is against me, telling me to sit down and shut up. But me, I never cared much for being pushed around, told what to do, or who to do it for. Guess that's just my nature. And there ain't no one left but me and the bucket of boats, so it's up to me to call the play. The guy with the bad temper, the guy with the knives in his knuckles, the guy with an axe the size of the Republic to grind. And that's where Logan tells Sentinel-1 to cover him, as he drops down to do what he does best. No glider needed, didn't even thank the bus driver. But it goes on with him saying, sounds familiar, reminds me of something me and Victor used to say. Same spit, different day. I think that's how it goes, or at least so I've been told. And he's like, guess it's my MO. So here I go again. Deja vu, coming right at you. But right after this, we head over to a conversation between Director Prestovic and Dr. Lysenko. And just as a quick reminder, Dr. Lysenko, he's the guy we saw not too long ago back in issue 9 when the opposition attacked the Sentinel factory, and he was trying to get the director out of there fast, mainly because the place was getting ready to self-destruct. But at the time, dude was terrified with the combination of the attack as well as the factory getting ready to nuke itself. But right now we find him telling the director that the Phoenix specimen is rejecting protocol, and it's mainly because they no longer have the Xavier specimen since they used it to nuke the opposition, but Xavier's brain, which is all that was left of him, is what they were using before in order to control the Phoenix specimen, or at least telepathically convince her to cooperate. So now that they no longer have that option, Dr. Lysenko's trying to convince the director that they should start harvesting the Phoenix specimen. And in the defense of preserving Jean, when the director tells him she's the most powerful mutant they have at their disposal, this dude's like, no, it. And he thinks harvesting is the only logical choice, because the Phoenix specimen is way too powerful to just be trusted to cooperate. So he goes on to suggest the new excess units now that the opposition are gone, only for the director to tell him we don't know that the opposition is gone. The riots have quieted, and we've cut off the opposition's head, and still a headless chicken can run. And there's a lot of headless chicken action that's building up in the background. But aside from the current state of the opposition, the director believes the whole idea of dissecting their greatest asset, in the case of the Phoenix specimen, is just premature. And really it's just because she believes there's more potential if they keep Jean intact. But in the middle of this conversation, Dr. Lysenko sees something outside in the sky, and for a moment he's like, wait a minute, what's that? Only for Wolverine to come smashing through the window in a way that's absolutely terrifying to the director and the doctor. And it's like, on one hand, with seeing the director's reaction and seeing that look on her face, I'm thinking like, oh, I thought you liked dropping surprise death attacks. But instead, no, both of them are scared stiff. And Wolverine doesn't waste any time before he pops those claws, and he just tears into Dr. Lysenko. Like, dude doesn't even get a sentence out before those claws go in. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, hey, okay, Logan has some great hearing. Did he catch what dude was saying about Jean on the way down or something? Because he went straight for this guy. Which in turn allows Director Prstovic to call for the XS units to come protect her, but she's barely able to get the words out, because she knows after killing the opposition, her ex-Winter Soldier is good for killing everything in sight, and right now his sights are only on her. But it doesn't take long for one of the XS units to show up, and the one that shows up, it just happens to be the Cyclops unit, and it hits Wolverine with the optic blast right away, while telling him, intruder, halt. And now with how this goes down, I want to ask you guys something, because look at this. Because at first Logan's like, yeah, and it tells him to halt again before shooting again. And Logan's like, man, I heard you the first time, I was halting. But right here, as it keeps going for Logan with the optic blast attacks, he maneuvers around it and he takes the Sentinel's head clean off. And now this terrifies Director Prstovic, because the head of the XS unit controls Scott Summers' head. So now this thing is just out of control. And I gotta say, this had me thinking, what if we got a moment here where after Wolverine took the head off of this XS unit, Scott Summers regained consciousness and he's like, where am I? Why can't I feel anything? And it all just came down to a moment where he was like, Logan, kill me, please. I'm sorry. Because that's not how this plays out. But Logan ends up going for the other head and taking this thing down rather quickly, which still feels like a mercy kill in a lot of ways, because Scott Summers' current state, this wasn't living, man. So Wolverine's definitely doing him a favor here. And just after this, Logan looks over at Director Prstovic and he's like, you got a lot of lives you owe me. And when he heads over to her, she's like, I'll do whatever you say. And he's basically like, oh, well, ain't that nice? But then he tells her, you're gonna take me to the woman whose voice I heard in my head. You're gonna take me to the Phoenix specimen. And I can just imagine the relief the director's feeling right now, like, oh, he has a request, so I actually get to live a little bit longer. And she doesn't waste any time. She takes Logan to the cerebellum, where the Phoenix specimen's being held. She cooperates. She radios in her clearance, and the voice responds like, yes, one moment please. But even still, Logan lets her know like, hey, I'm gonna keep these claws up here till I see where we're going. Call it a contingency. And you know, it's like we've seen Logan brought down here before, but at that time he was still under their influence as the Winter Soldier, so I wouldn't expect him to remember coming down here before. And as they head in, Logan takes a sniff and he's like, yeah, something smells rotten down here. But then the director tries to tell him something. She's like, please, only for Logan to tell her, I guess you haven't noticed. You ain't in no position to ask for favors. And I will say, because of what we've seen throughout this series, I can only imagine there's still more to Director Prstovic that we have yet to learn about, because it's always felt like a part of her story has been tucked away. But right now that's neither here or there, because next he just shoves her off and tells her to go open the door. So she does, and it quickly turns this into a moment where it's like, this is Logan finally getting to see Jean in this state while he's in his right mind. And aside from that, Logan doesn't really remember their history. All he remembers is that the sound of her voice in his head, it made him feel home. So right here he asks the director, what is she doing to her? Like, what is all this? And Prstovic tells him, she's one of the most powerful mutants I've ever come across. We used her as an antenna, sending out signals to control our various agents. And you were one of them. And Logan tells her, you're still talking like we ain't creatures with thoughts and feelings or souls, but it should be you up there. You're the least human of everyone in this room. Lower her now. And that's where the director promptly follows those directions, and she lets Jean down. And this gives us our first look at her, because right away Logan takes off all of this equipment just before telling her, howdy lady. But you can even tell here that Jean's been through it. She has scars that are likely from the fight before coming here, or perhaps even whatever else they did to make her compliant with all the cerebellum hardware. But Logan goes on to talk to her, saying here, "I've heard your voice in my head, even though I was doing awful things, terrible things. It was the one thing that centered me, made me feel home. I can't describe it exactly." And right there, Logan takes a couple sniffs again, because now that smell is back. And as he gets ready to say what it almost smells like, Magic pops up and she just puts the soul sword straight through Director Prostovic's back, as she also finishes Logan's sentence by telling him brimstone. So the scent he was smelling was brimstone, which makes sense now that we know what the scent was. And Magic goes on to say here, "There's a reason for this, Director Prostovic. You are helping the enemy steal Republic property. Did you really think you could walk away from this unscathed?" And as she's saying this, we see Colossus making his way into, so right away we know things are about to get ugly. And now Logan's like, hell of a time for a family reunion. So then Colossus is like, family? Do not speak to me of family. And I mean, that's coming from the guy who just greenlit a telepathic airstrike that killed his brother. But he just goes after Logan, and Colossus gets the upper hand rather quickly. Then he tells his sister, "This was our most fearsome asset, Ileana. This puny thing." And she tells him, "I almost feel sorry for him, brother. First we kill his playmates, then his doctor." And Colossus is like, "To think of the resources that we spent on this failure. So small." Then Logan pops his claws and he's like, "F you, big boy." And he slices him on the face. And it's like, this past year, we've had some good stories where Colossus has played the villain role. But in the Ultimate Universe, moments like this just remind me how this version of Colossus, he thinks a lot of himself. And it's not often that he's dealing with someone who fights back. So when Logan puts a "bout it" scar on his face, Colossus is like, "You dare." And it's basically got Logan like, man, whatever. You and your fascist sister could come get it. So they both charge at Logan. So it's on now. And don't take me wrong, I'm not trying to take nothing away from Colossus, but his reaction to Wolverine just a moment ago, it's kind of like that young Biff moment when he's like, "Oh, since when did you become the physical type?" And that's just funny to me. And now, not long after they both attack Logan, Colossus finds himself winded, and he's just like, I tire of these games. And it's just like, yeah, buddy, sure, that's what it is. I'm sure that's what it is. So Magic tells him, "Brother, you forget. The Winter Soldier is a wild beast, and a wild beast must be tamed by its master." So she ties his hands up and she's like, "See, you can be tamed." Then she tells Colossus, "Brother, do you have anything to say to this creature?" And that's where Colossus gets up and he steps over like, "Okay, well maybe I'm not too tired of these games. I could play a little bit more." And he picks up Logan like, "Now, let us talk." And then suddenly, for some reason, Colossus can't move, just before he finds himself catching a fever of sorts. And his head just keeps getting hotter and hotter, and the whole time Magic's trying to ask him what's wrong, what's going on, what is happening right now. But dude is just like, it burns. And that's where we see that this is nothing other than the Phoenix specimen cooking Colossus's head, melting the organic steel. And even now Magic's like, "Tell me what to do." And his last words are just run. Run, sister, save our family. And man, the look on Ileana's face, she's just looking like, I can't believe what I'm seeing right now. And to even take it a step further, the Phoenix specimen allows Ileana to leave. She just tells her to flee. Be gone. And Magic leaves, but she's like, "I go, witch. For my brother, I go." But this is not over. And it's like, ooh, Magic, I hear what you're saying, and I love you, but this is definitely over. So she gets up out of there. But on the flip side, this attack, just taking down Colossus, it took a lot out of the Phoenix specimen. As far as Jean's physical body, because keep in mind, she's been strung up for years at this point. She was sedated while being fed the minimum nutrients, so she's suffering from severe muscle atrophy. But when she falls here, Logan's quick and he's able to catch her just in time. And after that, he gets her out of there. And as he does, we go back to his narration here with him saying, "Not long ago, I performed a ritual to right myself in the world. Can't say it got rid of all the bad, but I felt clean coming out of it. As we walk out of this place that took our bodies, our minds, and warped them, turned them against us, against our friends, I get a similar feeling. I don't know if it'll get rid of all the bad, but it'll go a long way to helping. And the little helps better than none at all. I've learned that the hard way. It's funny. I don't think I'm the only one feeling that way, but that's that broken record. Plays again, and again, and again. War and peace, peace and war, a dance between the two. One leads, the other follows. But for how long can people take the bad as a matter of course, without wondering if there's something better, something else? We got a habit of not tossing the record when it's broke. We like to try and fix things, find those same grooves, even if we know it ain't possible. Maybe that's the deja vu I keep talking about. Just a magic trick, an illusion, Maybe I'm tricking myself now, but I like to think this is something different, something new. Look at me, another broken record, but maybe I like it that way. How's that for deja vu? Alright, so coming back, we get caught up with Magik, Jean, and Wolverine. But starting with Magik, the last time we saw her was in issue 12, when Logan went to free Jean from the cerebellum, and Magik came through with her brother Colossus to try and stop him, only for Jean to get herself together just enough to the point where as the Phoenix, she made Colossus a non-issue going forward, like he's cooked, pun intended. But after doing this, Jean allowed Magik to get away, cause she literally told her, go, flee child. And that's what Magik did. She escaped the limbo and she hasn't been seen since. And before we go any further, I want you guys to keep in mind, when this happened, Magik had taken a series of L's going into this. And at that time, leading up to the Maker's return, I doubt she wanted the Maker to come back and see her holding all these L's. Because not too long before, she was tricked and double-crossed by Emmanuel DaCosta in Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion. And that's in addition to her being defeated by both Miles Morales and Maystorm. And aside from that, we learned in Ultimate Endgame issue 1 that most of the members of the Maker's Council, they've spread out as far away from the city as they could get. So I imagine all these things contributed towards Magik's decision to flee to Limbo and not come back for some time. Though when she left, she did say that this isn't over. So she's not done, but she hasn't been back since. But what we end up doing now is taking a look back 25 years ago and hearing the story of her childhood, which looks very similar to 616 Illyana, but it also lines up with what we saw in Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion, when Emmanuel DaCosta revealed Illyana's greatest fears. But this picks up with her saying here, ever since I was a child, I have believed in monsters. My father told of his monsters often, greedy, powerful, dangerous men from the cities. But I never feared men. I feared one man, one monster alone, the Inside Man. He would watch me silently from the darkness. I told my father, of course. But father told me I was imagining things, but I wasn't, because one day he opened that door and I heard his voice for the first time in my head. He called me by my name and he called himself a friend. And that voice told me he had come to bring me home. I found myself in a strange, desolate place, unlike any I'd ever seen or imagined. He continued to speak to me. He told me to follow his voice. Despite my fear, despite how alone and cold and confused I felt, I could not help but to follow. I wanted to run. I did. I wanted to call for my brother's help. But then, he welcomed me. He welcomed me to my destiny, grand and glorious as he put it. And then he welcomed me to his paradise. And I gotta say, anytime we talk about Magik's story and her history with Belasco, it just has me like, yeah, lock him up. But much like before, we're not shown too much about Magik's history. But just know, at this time, with Arcady and Colossus dead and Magik missing, the people of the Eurasian Republic are heavily inspired by the sacrifices made by the opposition. They're tired of dictators and they're rising up. And that's where things are currently at. When we go back to Wolverine, Phoenix, and Sentinel-1, with them laying low underground while the people up top are marching. And even now, with Wolverine just taking a peek up there, as he comes back down, you're hearing people up there getting shot in the leg. It's crazy. But nonetheless, they're still fighting. And in a way, it kind of seems like a parallel to a lot of what we've seen from the heroes of Earth 6160, especially in this very moment in Ultimate Wolverine. And even now, Sentinel-1 or David Howler, he tells Logan like, hey, we can help them. Only for Logan to tell him like, yeah, that's gonna be tricky. Or that's gonna put them in a tricky spot. Cause he tells him, we get involved in this, then we gotta take responsibility. And where does that end? Do we set up a new government to our liking? Become the new leaders that they'll grow to hate? We ain't Mikhail with grand schemes and motives. This is up to them, the people. They gotta figure this one out. It ain't going to be up to us. We did our part, we set the pieces in motion. And it makes sense. But in the here and now, when it comes to Jean Grey, she's not doing too well. And these guys ain't giving up on her. Cause like Director Prestovic mentioned in her notes, Jean had been held so long in the cerebellum to where it had given her muscle atrophy to the point to where her body was considered useless. And because of that, to an extent, they weren't really worried about her escaping because they knew she wouldn't last long. But at the same time, the director wanted to keep Jean intact. Unlike some other people, like Dr. Lysenko, who basically wanted to cut Jean up and keep what he found useful. And you know, the more he kept talking, at one point I was like, okay, I'm sure this is the guy who was like, hey, now hear me out. Let's take Cyclops' head and put it in the stomach of a Sentinel. Like, this guy had a thing for cutting up mutants and repurposing their parts. And so to be honest, I'm glad he's out of here. Because if he wasn't, they need to be working on putting him behind bars. Because something wasn't right with that man. So I'm glad him and Wolverine got to play a bit of rock, paper, adamantium claws with a sprinkle of open chest. But in the here and now, when Wolverine asks Sentinel-1 how Jean's doing, he tells her she needs medicine. Her body is failing and the infection is spreading. And all they really have for her right now is like an IV. And there's a moment here where Jean just screams out, "Mother, why didn't you?" before she passes out again. So I imagine she's having dreams about her life before Xavier, with something pertaining to her mother Elaine, her older sister, or the death of her friend. Like, we just don't know how close her history is to 616 Jean. But this outburst is really short and she passes right back out. But during this time, Sentinel-1 taps her IV and he's like, "We're gonna need more." And he tells Logan that they can help her, but they're gonna need medicine from above. So that's where Logan's like, alright, I can head east along the sewer line and try to find a less dicey spot to go above. Just tell me what she needs. Which in a way kind of feels like Wolverine's being sent on a side mission, because as he makes his way, you kind of get this feeling where it's like, I know this dude ain't finna go get these supplies and come back and have no kind of problem in between. And surely enough, he sniffs out some trouble, because this is where he runs into Ursa Major, who is also a part of Directorate X. And you can tell this dude just finished munching on somebody down here, because he's covered in blood and he's looking at Wolverine like he's a snack. And he's not having it. So this quickly turns into a kill or be killed situation. And I can just imagine, since Director Prostovic had used Xavier's brain for the bomb and now Jean's escaped, I can just imagine that there's nothing keeping any of their other projects or other specimens under control outside of the pre-established XS units. And who knows how long those are going to hold up. But even in this bloodbath of an encounter, Logan feels a great deal of sympathy for Ursa Major, because he knows what it's like firsthand to have Director Prostovic in his head and not have his mind be his own. But that doesn't mean he's about to let this dude Leonardo DiCaprio him down here. So Logan makes it clear, like, hey, I feel bad for what they did. I know what it's like, but if I gotta put you down, then I'm gonna do what I gotta do. Which still leads to Logan getting smacked around, which has Logan like, hey, this ain't the way it's supposed to go. Spoken like any person who's losing a fight. And I'm not even mad at it, because it's not like he's dealing with the lightweight here. Because not only is Ursa Major insanely strong, but dude can fight, and he's smarter than the average bear. So again, I would expect for Logan to take a bit of a beating throughout this. Like, it's not going to be a walk in the park. But eventually there comes a point where Logan's like, alright, that's enough. And he gets to slicing. Because he didn't even want this fight to begin with. He just wasn't given the option to walk away. And after cutting his arm off, Logan gives him a warning. He's like, hey, had enough? And Logan asks him, like, you got any sense left in that skull, or did they take that too? And Ursa gives him the finger. And I ain't gonna front, when I saw that, I was like, bro, you mean to tell me using your right mind this whole time? Because that's kind of what this seems like. And no, I'm not saying that's the case at all, but that's the sort of gesture that lets Logan know that Buddy here wants some more. And that's why Logan's like, oh, you like to bleed, huh? So Logan just slides right in and hits him in the honey pot. And from there, Logan is no longer holding back. Because up until now, he was dishing blows that Ursa could take. Because Logan's like, hey, dude's not in his right mind. I'm not going to try and go ham or nothing. Like, we could scrap, but I'm not going to turn all the way up. Like, that wouldn't be right. But then dude gave him the finger. And now his brains is leaking through the roof of his mouth. And from there, Logan just keeps going. And going. And going. And for Logan, it's not really any malice here. It's more of a mercy kill. Because when he's done, he just tells Ursa, nightmare's over, bub. Forever. Like saying, now you can rest. In peace. And after this, Logan keeps it moving. Because again, he's still going to make this supply run for Jean. And when he comes out from underground, he does make his way to an area that's not as busy as where they were before, though still the place is trashed and there's graffiti everywhere. But first things first, then Logan needs to make sure and get the supplies for Jean. So he breaks into a nearby pharmacy and he handles that. But just after getting the supplies that Sentinel-1 told him to grab, Logan sees a bunch of pictures on the wall, just taped to the wall outside the pharmacy, with the words written over their faces, "Bring them home, Ilyana Rasputin." And I imagine these are just some of the people who Magic had taken to limbo, like she had threatened others she would do before, like Director Prostovic, who took a little field trip, and perhaps some of these could be mutants who were taken as well. But either way, after the uprising, the people are like, hey, enough's enough, bring them home. But nonetheless, after Logan sees this, he quickly makes his way back underground and back to Jean. Alright, so coming back, this continues Magic's origin story from issue 13, with her saying, I ran days, months, years. I do not know how long I wandered those tunnels. Each route seemed to be forever, endless. I felt the inside man's grasp like shackles around my heart. No matter what friendly term he used, I was a prisoner here. I wondered if it was pointless to run, knowing that he had dominion over each creature in every corner of this hell he called Limbo. And just when I thought I'd figured out his tricks, he would find a new way to fool me again. But you see, I don't enjoy being tricked, and I like being fooled even less. Yet these were his tools, and I, a young, innocent girl, was helpless against his schemes. At least, that's what I wanted him to think. My father knew war. He knew its cost. And he knew that if I and my siblings ever faced adversity, we should know how to fight. You must find the weakness. there is always one. And indeed, this was true. It became very clear to me then. The Inside Man may claim to be the ruler of Limbo, but it was I who was in control, because I alone was his weakness. And with seeing this replayed through Magic's story, after seeing her retreat to Limbo back in issue 12 when the Phoenix melted her brother, I imagine she's either there right now or making multiple trips there to visit these moments from her past so she can regather and plot her revenge. Because it feels like this whole thing of revisiting her story somehow ties into the missing people that she's taken, because looking back at her story, it just confirms how she's become a version of Belasco in her own way. But even with that being said, there's no guarantee that she's been in Limbo this whole time, and we still have yet to see what exactly she's been up to. Because when we go back to Phoenix, Wolverine, and Sentinel-1, their main focus right now is tracking down the last surviving Rasputin leader, because now it's only Illyana. And even though they keep running into dead ends, they've gotten word of a spot that she might be hiding out at. And Logan's not sure about some of these leads because he's been given bad intel before. But right now, when Phoenix comes down from taking a look over the trees, Logan's like, just ahead, there's a... And she finishes his sentence saying town, which has him thinking that she's reading his mind for a moment. And after all this time that she's been free from Directorate X, she's made quite the recovery, so she's ready for the hunt too. Because after everything the Eurasian Republic leaders had put them through, they want to make sure that that doesn't happen to anyone else. And Magic's the last missing piece to sealing that deal. So hopefully stopping Magic and finding all those missing people will put an end to things. And now when Sentinel-1, David Haller, gets back from doing his scans, Logan asks him if he's picked up anything. And David's like, no anomalies, not yet at least. So this just brings them all back to the lead that Logan had before that they hadn't checked yet. Because he's still hoping this intel will turn up something, unlike the other leads that he's had. But before they go to check it out, Logan's like, we need some supplies. So he heads into the nearby town to make a supply run. But even now, Logan's hoping to stir up some conversation and find a bit more information to help them on their search. And when Logan goes into one of these shops, he grabs what he needs and he gets ready to pay. And he asks the guy like, hey, how much I owe you? And the dude tells him like, that'll be $15.89.91, which almost sounds like a year reference to a time when the X-Men roster was shaken up with the end of one era and the start of a new one. But regardless of how you look at it, that price is high. So the shopkeeper lets him know that prices have gone up since the trouble in Moscow started, though they started long ago. Then he goes on to tell Logan, but for friends, almost like he's already got an idea of who he is. So Logan tells him that he just happens to be coming from Moscow, but he's just passing through. So he politely asks the shopkeeper if he's seen anyone else passing through, maybe with a big old sword and a tail between their legs. And that's when this guy's like, you're him, aren't you? The savior of Russia. And Logan's like, I ain't no savior, just passing through. But go on, tell me what you seen. So later on, Logan tells Jean and Sentinel-1, shopkeeper said a platoon of Republic loyalists have been coming in regularly the past 2 weeks for supplies. He figures they have a camp somewhere north of town. They may camouflage themselves somehow. It's how they fooled numero uno. And locals don't like them. They get drunk, they get mean and sloppy. But from everything he'd gathered from the shopkeeper, there is no word on Magic. But the guy did mention something about Limbo. So Logan asks Phoenix if she's heard of it, and he tells her that the locals speak of it the same way they talk of heaven and hell. And this is where things get pieced together a bit for Logan, because Phoenix tells him that she's heard of it and that it's like a pocket dimension, a liminal space where Magic is queen over all. So Logan puts it together like, yeah, that's likely where they saw her escape to, and there's a good chance that that's where she's holding the prisoners too. And now after heading north of town for a while, they find a small camp with like 20 armed soldiers. So Phoenix does a scan to see if Magic's there and make sure that these are the Republic loyalists, so they don't just run up on some random campers. But Phoenix isn't sure because she's able to scan everyone there except for one woman. And every time she tries, she just runs into a wall. And that's where Logan's like, well, I'm pretty good at breaking those down. So he just leaps right in doing what he does best, which is nothing short of impaling a person here or there, splitting bodies in half. You know how Logan gets down. But quickly, this lets Phoenix and Sentinel-1 know that it's go time. So now they gotta get it popping. But what's funny is how, with all this going on, you got one dude yelling in the back like, well, we're under attack. And when they say this, I can just imagine this poor fella who Logan has just split in half, who's likely still alive for the next few seconds. I just imagine the top half of his body hearing this and just being like, really? You think? But these guys really do go in here, because even Phoenix is just popping necks with telekinesis like, this is easy mode. But as all these guys are getting turned into hibachi out here, that one lady, she just gets up slowly, as if she's just unbothered throughout all this. And it's not until she turns around when we see that this is Ultimate Lady Deathstrike. And as soon as Logan sees her, he's like, hey lady, whose nightmare did you crawl out from? And her story's pretty crazy. even with her not saying a word, because we peel back the layers as this continues, and it's wild. But even if she wasn't one of these Republic loyalists, you can just tell by her whole getup that she was in the Directorate X program. And Logan picks that up because they basically got the same stylist. But as soon as she sees him, it's on. And she's crazy aggressive. But of course, it's nothing that Logan can't handle, with him being an ex-Winter Soldier and all that, because he's ready to handle what she's dishing. Which, overall, I imagine is very similar to 616 Yuriko, your Lady Deathstrike from the main Marvel Universe, with the adamantium claws and the cybernetic healing factor, though in this case with the cybernetics cranked up. But while these two are going at it, there's a moment here where Logan's able to kick flip her off of him, and she recovers from it quite nicely. But when she comes back around for the next attack, Logan's ready. And it almost comes off as if her over-aggressive fighting style makes her a bit predictable. Because this time when she dives at him, he slices her across the stomach, revealing a ton of wires, which right there just has him like, wait, you're not even a mutant. And he goes on saying, not human either, you're just machinery now. A toy for the Eurasian Republic to fill with wires and knives and bad intentions. And much like what we saw Logan go through, he knows that she's being used like a mindless weapon, much like how he was. And what's really cool here is how for Logan, throughout this fight, he's basically doing a physical inspection because she's not really telling him anything, so he's got to figure all that out as they trade blows. But this method of silent interrogation, it's only going to tell him so much. So that's where Logan finishes what he started from earlier, because when he first saw her, he was like, whose nightmare did you crawl out from? With him picking up that she was a part of Directorate X, and after that, when he saw that she was stuffed with wires and more machine than human, he basically told her she's a toy to them. So now he's like, you want to know what I am to them? Nothing. But a bad freaking dream, just before he hits her with the sidekick and pins her down. Because again, more than anything else, they need information. And if anyone here is going to know anything about the person they're really after, who's Magic, then it's going to be Lady Deathstrike. So this is where Jean comes over. She's like, is that the woman? And Logan's like, yeah, this one's more machine than human. And I got an inkling that maybe she's got some information in that skull of hers. Think you can break in? And even though Jean couldn't do it before, she gives it another shot here. And Logan's like, you better hurry up, she's feisty. But this time around when Jean tries to peep into her mind, it works. And even though all we're shown here is a ton of images that imply in a number of ways that Magic had just taken Yuriko at a young age, I imagine this version of Yuriko is also the daughter of Kenji Oyama, Lord Darkwind, who in the main Marvel Universe created the process of bonding adamantium to bone. So it would make sense for the Eurasian leaders to have stolen that process from him, in addition to Magic taking young Yuriko and throwing her into Directorate X. And now when Jean looks into Yuriko's mind, she's completely overwhelmed by how much she sees. It's a lot. And when Logan asks her if she's okay, Jean just curls up and she's like, so much pain. So Logan's like, yeah, okay, whatever. What about Rasputin? Almost like he don't care, but we know he cares. But Jean tells him here, 20 locations. I pulled 20 locations. And Ilyana Rasputin will be at one of them. I'm sure of it. So yeah, I can just imagine either on the way to the next spot or at some point down the line, either Jean will be able to elaborate more on Yuriko's past, which come to think of it, it'd be crazy if this Yuriko had a good relationship with her father, because 616 Lord Darkwind was a terrible father. And I think we talked more about that in the Bullseye getting adamantium video, and I have that linked down in the description. But either way, hopefully down the line, either Jean elaborates more on Yuriko's past, or Sentinel-1 will get some time with her and find a way to free her mind, or what's left of it, like he did for Logan. Because even if Holler doesn't have the right equipment anymore, between Yuriko's cybernetics and his Sentinel body, there's got to be a compatible data cable somewhere. Alright, so coming back, first we pick up with Magic and Belasco, who prior to this she's really just referred to as the Inside Man, but this continues with her saying Belasco was obvious, those with power often are, as his power stagnated, as he felt content with his own self-imposed status quo. I built myself anew. What little power he stole from me, I let him take. It made no difference to me, because he never knew my true strength. Even I didn't know it, till then. But I learned, and I learned, and I learned. And when there was no more to learn, I acted. I longed for my family, especially Piotr. And in those dark moments of contemplation, I recalled something my father once told me. A man who does not act is a fool. And I asked him then, and what about a woman? He laughed. A woman, he said, with a smirk, would be 1,000 steps ahead. He was not wrong. Father really was. Belasco was too blind, too arrogant to think beyond himself. I took advantage of this. As Belasco's life essence flickered, the energy he vampirically stole from me solidifying into my own soul sword, he muttered one final word, child, a demeaning reproach meant to keep me in my place. But I had no one except Belasco to thank, for I was no longer a child. I had wisdom and age and youth and innocence all at once in this broken mirror of a realm. The minute I stepped into this dimension, I, Ilyana Rasputin, shed my mortal skin and was reborn. Here I am queen. Here I am magic. So yeah, this now comes in as the final bit of detail to build on top of the drip feed of her origin to show us how this Ilyana became the ultimate magic that we know. And following this, when we go back to Wolverine, Phoenix, and Sentinel-1, who are currently on the outskirts of the Eurasian Republic and not too far from Latveria, where it's popping, it's here where we get a bit of overlap from what we've seen in Ultimate Endgame, or at least the question being raised by Jean if that is what they're looking at here, because she asked Logan if what's happened in Latveria spilled over into the ER. But as it stands, neither of them are sure. All they know now is that it's possible that some of the symptoms may have made their way here. But when they arrive, they see a soldier in the distance getting busy with his bayonet. And it has Logan mentioning here, they say mutants are the next evolutionary step for mankind, that we're better. We got powers and abilities that make us special, make us gods on Earth. So why the heck do we still do this to each other? I get to thinking about what makes us better, about what that really means. Better. It's another one of them words. Because I think when folks say it, they think it means we're some higher thing, closer to God, if you believe in that sort of thing. But me, I think it means something else. What I think those folks forget is that humans are animals, biology. They're driven to hunt, to kill. It's in their nature. And if we're better, maybe we're just better killers. And it's like, man, that's deep. And now as they see this guy in the distance, Jean tries to get a read on him, but it's difficult for her to do. And she says his mind is like a tangle of vines. Like there's a partition, but she can't quite will it in. And at this point, Crazy Man, he done spotted them. And what's wild is when Jean tries to work her way through and figure this guy out. She's like, there are too many thoughts, thousands of thoughts, hundreds of thousands, like he's possessed. And Wolverine's trying to keep up, like, what you mean? Possessed? And she's like, no, it's an infection. So he's like infected with what? Rabies? Then Jean's like, oh. And Logan's like, what is it? He's literally like, yo, I'm not a mind reader. Like, tell me what you seeing. And that's where Jean tells him he's been programmed. And now we know prior to this, there's been the whole situation with Directorate X and their mental programming methods. Both Jean and Logan are very familiar with this. But also to take this back to their question of if this is some of the events from Latveria spilling over into the Eurasian Republic, this goes back to what we saw in Ultimate Endgame, where starting with the people of Latveria, there were reports of numbers of them getting infected after being exposed to what was likely the maker's microplastic spores that were designed to remodel minds into receivers. And now given that Logan, Jean, and Sentinel-1 are close to this area, it would make sense that this infection or this programming has made it this far. But given the way how this plays out when this guy attacks, I'm led to believe that there's a bit more going on here. Because when Jean tells Logan that this guy's been programmed, though she can't tell how exactly, the dude just comes rushing in and Logan's like, well, yeah, he look eager to talk. And it appears to be a language that Logan is very fluent in. And for a brief moment, Jean's like, wait, maybe we can fix him. Like maybe she can try and go in his mind again and sort this out. But this guy doesn't even give them a chance. But to Logan's credit, he at least disarms this guy first. It's quick and clean, Logan knocks him back and Logan's like, hey, don't you move. Only for the dude to look at him with his familiar blank white eyes and all the blood dripping from his teeth, which again has Logan looking like, hey, don't even think about it. But of course, this guy goes for the attack and an overhead at that, just to get hole punched and drip his dirty blood all over Logan's $200 suit, hitting them corners too hard. But immediately after they take him down, it's pretty clear to them that this guy wasn't of his own mind. And when Logan calls this out for what it is, and he's like, I've been there, he tells Jean that she has too. But it's still really fresh for Jean, so she doesn't want to get too deep into it. But also while they're here, the blood that it came out of this guy and dripped on top of Logan's head, it gets into his eye. And before you know it, both of his eyes are red. And as this is happening, Jean's like, wait a minute, those voices. I still hear those voices. They've dimmed, but they're still there. And now this opens a whole new can of problems with Logan just flipping out and grabbing his head, because what we saw going on with the soldier has just traveled from his blood over to Logan. So when Jean and Sentinel-1 rush in to try to help Logan out, he just goes feral and he bites Jean, which is crazy, but I can imagine this moment going a lot worse. But immediately she's begging Logan to stop and to try and fight it. So David comes through blasting him, and I mean hard. Like it's got Logan tumbling down the street. And that's where Jean's like, I don't know if that'll keep him down. So David's just like, it may. But then when Logan gets back up and starts growling, then David's like, or it may not. And when Logan gets up with his intestines hanging out like hot spaghetti sliced out of a grocery bag, he just takes off. So that has Jean and David like, yo, we can't let him out on the loose like this. And Jean says here, whatever was in that soldier's blood is spread to Logan. That's got to be it. We need to hunt him down now, before it's too late. And I'll say, even with this happening to Logan, with us seeing him run away into isolation like an actual Wolverine, when he does this, it's almost like this is him trying to fight it. Because Logan's biggest fear when it comes to mind control is the possibility of him hurting someone he cares about. And for Ultimate Wolverine, that's happened too many times already. So I wouldn't put it past the idea of this being his attempt to keep them safe. But Jean and David are able to track him down fairly quickly, with Jean sensing him with her telepathy, and David using the Sentinel gear to track the blood trail. And I'll admit, even now, concern for me would have to be that bite that Logan gave Jean, because that can't be a good thing down the line. But as Jean and David head into this barn that Logan is retreated into, she tells David that she has this plan where they're going to try to trap him, or at least she thinks they can, and after that they can try to break through. And David's like, try. And Logan overhears a portion of this as they get closer, as Jean tells David, what other choice do we have? We have to save him. He's one of us. So Jean tries to talk to Logan because she knows he's close enough to hear her. And that's what she says, Logan, I know you're in here. I know that something has a hold of your mind, but I want you to try to remember. A few weeks ago, you told me that if you ever turned again, you wanted me to take it out of you. Let me help you. Do you remember that, Logan? And that's where the reprogramming in Logan's mind gets the best of him, because he goes to attack, only for Jean to stop him in midair in a way that is arguably just as terrifying. So just as planned, she ends up passing Logan off over to David so he can hold Logan down while she helps him out. And really seeing this just reminds me of how this Sentinel body that David is using, it was literally designed to apprehend mutants. So in a way, it's kind of perfect for what they're looking to do here, but also with thinking about David's previous role with the opposition, with how he would go into the minds of mutants who were formerly controlled by Directorate X, and it kind of had me thinking like, man, now he kind of has the perfect setup for handling a mutant who's gone out of control and helping them get back into the right mind. And when I first read this, I thought that's what we were going to see when Logan first lost it. But as Jean mentioned, he did ask her to help him. So that's the kind of help he's about to receive. But aside from this, just based on the question of if this is indeed coming from the maker's microplastic maker spores that we were told is literal machinery that remodels minds into receivers, I wouldn't put it past the idea that the maker's reception to these minds outside of the city have been cut off, thanks to Immortus and what we saw him doing in Limbo. And even though at the time we were specifically told this wasn't the hell dimension ruled by Ileana, with Immortus referring to his Immortus engine as a way to steal time so they're nowhere and everywhere at once. So I wouldn't say it was a direct doorway, but because Immortus's Limbo was made out of borrowed time, I can imagine when his engine was destroyed, a number of borrowed things that may have been thought to have been lost or defeated likely just went back when the engine was destroyed and time ran out. And really that just leaves the doorway open for a number of things. Because now it's like, is the maker's signal still cut off from the outside world? Did the destruction of the Immortus engine release something or someone who had been long gone? Who knows? Because all we've seen from these people who have been infected or reprogrammed, with their minds converted to be receivers, with no real answer of who or how many people are trying to send a signal through to them. So really this whole situation has us waiting to see what or who exactly is going to start speaking clearly at any point in time. But as David's holding Logan here, or at least trying to, Jean tells him here like, hey, Logan, this will hurt. As Jean subtly hits the iconic Dark Phoenix pose here, let me see what you're doing, and she burns Logan as a way to cook this infection or this programming out of him until she can't hear the voices anymore. And what's crazy about this is when she tells David to let Logan go so he can just lay there and heal, at first he just lays there, sizzling and not breathing, just unresponsive. It's kind of got David like, whoa, is he dead? And even Jean's not certain, like, no, he can't be. But eventually they see Logan's healing factor kick in. And even as he's reconstructing, Jean's just like, please be all right. Please be all right. And David's like, why hasn't he opened his eyes? And their concern is kind of funny because they're mad nervous. But eventually when Logan starts to open his eyes, he says to them, I got her. And that's where Jean's like, Logan, what do you mean? Who do you mean? And Logan says her, Ileana Rasputin. I saw her. Place called Limbo. And I think I know how to get to her there. Because as Logan continues the monologue from earlier, he's like, better. That's the word, all right. You know, pertaining to mutants being better killers. And he says here, yeah, I think I'm starting to understand. And this is crazy to see because this just might lead them to Latveria and to the Maker City as more of the Ultimate Universe starts to align. Alright, so this continues with another one of Magic's flashbacks, where they're saying, time worked differently in Limbo. A day on Earth was a week there. My disappearance tore my family apart. This wasn't a difficult thing to accomplish. Life itself had started the work not long before. Papa, alone since Mama died a year prior, became ill. He lost the will to speak. He never found it again, but Piotr refused to spare. With Mikhail away in our government space program, he gathered the men from the village and formed search parties, but I was gone without a trace, so he sought alternative methods. He turned to darkness for light, locating rare occult texts and conjuring spells. In other words, magic. Black magic. As they are wont to do, the dark powers obeyed, and he found his way in. He wandered those haunted halls alone, in search of me. When he found me, I was changed. The darkness had taken root inside of me, and I had petrified an armored self, a vision of what I needed to be to exist and rule in this realm. I had become a dark child, but Piotr did not care what I had become. He only cared that I was me, and his love and his devotion, it was enough. He took me in his arms and brought me home. The Ilyana he knew. He promised to keep me safe. Family, he said, was everything. He saved me, my brother, my leader. He promised me that we would never be separated like that again. And though the Phoenix specimen would later try her best to do so in the bowels of the Kremlin's cerebellum, I had made another promise, this one to myself, that nothing, not even death itself, could stand in the way of family. And so when I fled a burning Moscow for limbo, I realized that those traitors I had imprisoned for punishment could in turn become my fuel. I could rebuild a life free of the Maker's influence, a new chance at a new, different world, one for us. My promise would be kept, and the Rasputins would at last know peace. And now when we go back to Logan and the others, this takes us to Volga Castle in the Eurasian Republic, because like we saw back in issue 15, when Logan had his vision that revealed to him where magic was, he knew she went to Limbo, and he knew there was a way to get to Limbo from here. But after searching this place from top to bottom, trying every secret passageway, knocking on every wall, they found nothing. So that led them back to the village, since they've had help from the villagers before. But the tricky part about this is that the help they got before, it came from the locals who looked at them like saviors. But on the flip side, there were also some who believed that Logan and Jean were no different from the Eurasian leaders, almost as if they were an extension of them. And Logan's like, didn't matter what we did or what we said, we were them, mutants. But eventually they did end up getting some help from a mage, who greeted them by saying, I know what you seek. And Jean just knew that this was the unconventional route that they were going to have to take if they were going to find magic or those missing people. Because he goes on saying here, Jean knew that the door to Rasputin, the door to saving those folks she stole, wasn't going to be accessible to us unless we popped open a bottle of her own weird potion and swallowed it down. Down the rabbit hole, as the saying goes. Well, we tumbled and fell straight down it. Didn't need a push. Hell, we jumped right in. The way the mage Senna told it was that there were some places that were thinner, like reality itself, I mean. The thinner your reality, the closer you were to another universe or dimension. But reality grows scar tissue, just like me or you. Those thin spots close up, so you gotta find them quick. Ain't easy to do unless you got a buddy with all the knowledge in the known universe, pumped into a sentinel, whose government name is David Holler. No, but Logan goes on saying, but some places are like a festering wound, won't heal because it can't heal. Volga Castle is like that. It's a place where people hear and see things, where people disappear, where people go mad. And now really quick, I believe this also explains how Logan was able to see this whole vision back in issue 15, because at the time we talked about how their search had led them closer to Latveria, and how the infected that they'd come across was a byproduct of what the Maker was doing. So I can only imagine that's what gave Logan a peek behind the weakened barrier before they tracked magic to the north. But he goes on here saying Volga Castle's like that. It's a place where people hear and see things, where people disappear, where people go mad. And that's why we're here. We can get to Rasputin here because she can close her damn portal behind her, but she can't lock the door. She ain't got a key to. It's all an illusion of safety, of power. But we've opened our eyes, and we ain't closing them again. Like back when Logan freed Jean. And now with Logan's blood and the help of the mage, they're able to reopen a doorway straight to Limbo. And now when I first saw this, I was like, okay, great, you got the door open, but who's gonna let you out? But this turns into one of those cases where the doorway is only going to stay open till sunrise. So they got to get in there, handle their business, and get back out. But the bigger concern now that they have a way in, it's more so along the lines of them not knowing what's ahead, which does put a little more pressure on the time constraint, so there's that. And now right here before they go in, we get an example of something we're going to see a few times throughout this. And it's more of what we saw before as far as Logan and Jean really just looking after each other. Because when the door opens, Jean's like, who goes first? And he just looks at her like, yeah, you're funny. Because he just wants to make sure that it's clear before Jean comes down. Because heading into Limbo, there really is no safe space. Because who's to say where this doorway could have led them to? They were just looking for a way in and taking what they could get. And now when they arrive here, they make their way through a hallway, much like what Magic described in her flashback. And from here, it doesn't take long for Logan to pick up the scent of the missing people Magic had taken, which was a form of punishment at first that she later realized she could use as fuel in order to hold on to the last bit of family she has left. So Jean rushes to them so they can quickly get them free and get them out of here, only for Logan to stop when he picks up a scent nearby. So of course Jean's like, what are you doing? Why are you stopping? What is it? Logan tells her that he doesn't know yet and that he wants Jean to stay here and free these people while he goes to check it out by himself, because that way she can take them to the portal and from there Sentinel-1's just outside so he can get them home. And now Jean, she's basically like, okay, now I hear what you're saying, but that's not how the whole team thing goes. So she tells him she's gonna help these people get out, but after that she's not letting him do this alone. She's coming to find him. And Logan's just like, okay, boss. But either way, these people are ready to get out of here because some of them have been missing for a long time. And recently when Magic retreated here and decided to use them as fuel, they thought she was just gonna drain them to death. Like that was it. So Jean tells them to stay still as she melts the chains to free them up. And now as Logan goes further inside, to his surprise, he reaches this snowy area where he sees a cabin and a very familiar looking guy off in the distance who's out here taking trees down with just a couple of swings. So of course Logan gets ready to fight, only for this Colossus dude to just turn, look at him, grab his logs and walk off. Which makes me think of what Magic said earlier when she was talking about back when she first disappeared and how her brother didn't give up looking for her, as opposed to their father who fell sick and lost his will to speak. And it has me thinking like, man, with Magic finding this way to drain these people and hold on to her brother, it has me thinking like, man, did he also go quiet like their father to the point where he would never speak again? And is that connected to him not keeping his promise that he made to Ilyana so long ago, where he promised they would never be separated like that again? And it's like, now this is different since Magic was able to create this very dark, happy ending for them. But there's an argument to be made to say that this is probably a little worse. And now Logan, he doesn't know what he's looking at here. But even still, he goes on to approach the cabin that he sees in the distance. And when he goes inside, the door creaks open. And once again, Logan hits that fighting pose, only to find nothing at first. And it's almost like, man, you gonna stop making me waste these poses? Like he's ready to get active. But upon further inspection of this very strange cabin, sitting in this very strange snowy wood area, in limbo, Logan eventually finds Magic's childhood bedroom, where she's inside laying down, eyes closed, holding her soul sword. So Logan sees this, he's like, oh, there you are. All right, I'm finna just end it here. But before he does, the younger Ilyana, she walks in holding a teddy bear and a book, saying, excuse me, mister, did you come to play? Meanwhile, topside, we find that Jean's been able to get all the prisoners out of there. And as she's walking them to Sentinel-1, she tells him it's all right, because he might look like one of them, but he's with us. And she's even like, he's one of the good guys, I promise. And she lets them know that Sentinel-1's going to transport them all home, so now they know they're going to be safe. And after that, Jean tells David here that this is the last of them. You can take off as soon as she's loaded and start returning them to their families. So he asks her like, wait, you're staying? She tells him, yeah, Wolverine's still down there. I can't leave him. Because again, they've only got till sunrise till the portal closes. So Jean wants to get down there and make sure that Logan's good. But just before she heads back, with the sunrise coming, Jean tells the mage that she should go get some rest. And that's when the mage is like, what about you? And Jean's just like, can't rest, not yet. Because these guys gotta look out for each other. And now down inside Magic's childhood room, it's here where we get a better sense of what Magic's been doing. Because when the young Ilyana hands Logan the book with a picture of the Maker's helmet on it, she asks him if he could read her a story. And she's like, just one story, please. So Logan takes it and he starts looking through it. But at this time, because Jean's taken all the people who Magic was using to hold this place up, the young Ilyana's like, please, just one story before I go to sleep. Because now that the people who Magic was using to draw the power from, to steal this dream or this moment in time from her life back, she can no longer sustain her younger self, or even this place for that matter, which now makes the race against time even crazier, with there being no power, no fuel to hold all this up. Because now it's just Magic and whatever power she's drawn that she has left, keeping this whole thing going. So now when Jean comes back down, she's calling for Wolverine, and she gets nothing. So she does a telepathic scan to see where he's at, and that's where she discovers he's not alone. Magic's here. She's still alive, and with him up ahead. So she rushes to get to Logan, who right now is looking through the book young Ilyana gave him. And now Logan, he doesn't really read through it, he just kind of looks at the pictures, but you can tell it's showing the story that Magic's been telling over the past few issues, where she's explained how she's come to where she's at. And I imagine that's why the young Ilyana gave Logan the book, almost as if it were like a subconscious cry for help, in hopes of Logan finding some level of empathy, so he would allow Magic to keep those prisoners and keep this going. But Logan just slams the book and he's like, whatever you went through down here, it's no excuse for all the pain you caused up there. And now when Magic gets up, she's like, the energy, it's gone, what did you do? And that's where Logan's like, no portals, no escape. You get what you gave. As he puts his claws through her and he's like, this is for the muzzle. And it's crazy because as sad as Magic's story is, her family's story really, there's really no version of this where you just allow her to keep people as batteries. Because it's like, yeah, I hear your story, it's sad, what you want me to do? Only for her to say like, leave me these innocent souls. Then you hear that and it's kind of like, I don't know if I could do that. So Logan just skipped that whole dialogue, because that's not even mentioning what the Eurasian leaders did to Logan and Jean, or them killing the opposition, or what happened to Charles or Eric. The list goes on. So really, there was only one way this was gonna end. Now when Logan kills Magic, Jean's like, oh, there's only one person now. So as this place falls apart, The next thing she sees is Logan racing towards her, talking about, "Jean, the hell you doing here? Go back, the dimension's collapsing." And now of course Jean's like she's not going without him, because ever since he helped her escape, they've been watching each other's backs, and they've been very adamant about not giving up on each other. So to get Logan out of here faster, Jean picks him up with those burning hands. And she's just like, "Sorry, I'm so sorry. It'll just be a minute." Now this reminds me of the whole conversation of like Wolverine's healing factor, and how a lot of the times people are like, "He'll be fine, he has a healing factor." And me, I'm just like, yeah, but he still feels what he feels the whole time. So I mean, it's great that he'll recover, but it doesn't negate the suffering that he endures. And now the two of them are able to escape just in time. And it's crazy clutch because the sun ends up rising as soon as they get out, which was like their initial time limit before the doorway shut. But now that they're out, Jean sees the sun rise as a good sign. But Logan just tells her like, yeah, that's nice, but this ain't over yet, because they still got to deal with the Maker. Because every terrible thing that's happened traces right back to him. And now Jean, she tells Logan, she knows this, but for right now, she tells him, for right now, let's just enjoy the victory. And Logan's like, victory? How's that supposed to feel? And Jean tells him something like this as she grabs his hand and they fly off. And I can just imagine Logan thinking like, oh, so victory's hot. It feels like your hand about to burn off. But that'll do it for this one, guys, because now that Wolverine, Phoenix, and Sentinel-1 have finished their mission, it's time for them to join the others in the fight against the Maker. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/DopeSpill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.